Good evening, folks. Mike, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance as we begin this update?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Well, folks, it's been almost a year as we get ready for this particular phase of our master plan update. So we're the Master Plan Update Steering Committee meeting tonight, and it's going to be the kickoff with our consultants, RKG Associates. In a moment, I'll introduce the principal, who will be our main consultant for this, Ms. Judy Barrett, and then she will introduce her crew also. As we go through the evening, we'll go over the project schedule, the overall timeline, some committee meeting schedules, stakeholder interviews, public participation, a little bit of a recap of previous work that the consultants have already accomplished up to this point, and also a tour that they took of the town today. And it was 3 hours, huh?
It was
3 hour tour.
Oh,
Yeah,
it was fabulous.
Anybody remember the tune?
3 hour tour.
Source of information, other plan studies, data, etc., that the team has already unearthed, and others that will be forthcoming. The facilitated discussions that will take place, the issues with the master plan. What we're likely to hear from the consultants, what the consultants likely to hear from us. When I'm saying us, that is all of us, all 9,656 or so of us here who live in Littleton. So that's the us I'm talking about tonight, not just the folks sitting here at the table that are on the Master Plan Update Steering Committee. Any potential problems and opportunities that will be presented as we go through this process. Other communities that are somewhat similar to Littleton, peer group, if you will, some analysis that will be associated with that. What do we want for our master plan here in Littleton? So in other words, what plan are we going to come together, formulate, develop, and bring to town meeting, and then also for the planning board approval, that's going to guide us through the 10 years plus. And if you consider this is 2016, and the plan in place is 2002, so that's 14 years on a 10-year plan. So by the time we get this all ready to go in May of 2017, you can anticipate that it's going to be 10 years at least, and maybe a 10 or 15-year plan also. So how good we do today and this next year is going to be a huge, huge determinant on how well we do as a town in the succeeding 10 to 15 years. With that, I'm going to introduce Ms. Judy Barrett.
Thank you very much.
Associates.
Thank you. We went through the agenda, so I don't need to do that. But yes, I'd like to, we were asked tonight to kind of give those of you who haven't met us before a little bit of an introduction to our team and our approach to the plan. So I've kind of taken our interview presentation and consolidated that a little bit, and I'd like to start by introducing the team that's with me this evening. I'm Judy Barrett from RKG Associates. I'm the project manager for your master plan, and really just very delighted and enthusiastic about being here.
So
yes?
Turn the mic closer to you, though, please.
Certainly, yes.
If you want to sit there and talk, please. Thank you.
Children tell me that I yell loudly, but sometimes I'm not so sure that's true anymore. And so with me this evening on the team is Eric Halverson, who's in the middle of this group up here, who is also with RKG, formerly with Metropolitan Area Planning Council. Daphne Politis, with whom I have worked several times on different projects. Daphne's going to be very involved in the public engagement process with your plan. And then Peter Flinker from Dodson & Flinker, who will be leading a couple of charrettes a little bit later in this process, and also working closely with me and Eric on the land use element of your plan, and also contributing to the open space element as well. So not with us this evening is Patty Kelleher from Community Opportunities Group, the firm I used to work with. Patty is a preservation planner, and she will be working with me and with Peter, probably more closely with Peter, I think, than anybody, in terms of the historic and cultural resources piece of the plan. So that's that's the team. We're the ones you're going to be working with, and you'll always see one or more of us at any particular meeting. So our backgrounds are varied. We have a lot of experience in municipal planning. It's why we love to do comprehensive plans or master plans. I've been in this business just about 30 years, and I would say probably 99.9% of my work has been with local governments, so this is a particular passion of mine, but certainly I can say the same for my colleagues, not that you've been in the field for 30 years, but that a lot of their work is with local governments as well. We all love to work with the public. I think it's kind of one of the things that, you have to have a passion for working with people if you're going to do community master plans, because people want you to come to their town and understand why they love it so much, and the things that they're concerned about, and the things that they aspire for in their community, and you have to kind of have a passion for that. I think it's something that we all have as a team. We are pretty innovative. We're also practical. We're sort of both. I think we're pretty good at kind of thinking creatively and not discouraging creative thinking, and at the same time being very willing to say to a community, that's a really cool idea, but you're probably not ready for it right now, but don't let go of it. It's just a question of how do we program it into a plan. Maybe it's something you're not going to do in 2 years, but you might be able to do in 10. And so that creative and practical, I think, kind of captures the dichotomy that you juggle, I think, throughout a master plan process. Our understanding of a project like this is our job is multiple. First of all, to try to identify what the shared visions are for the community and trying to figure out sort of the pathway forward to meeting that. Ensuring that your process is both public and transparent and very inclusive. And we'll talk a little bit later about sort of what the dimensions of that inclusive process might look like. Certainly, every town I've ever worked in has an interest in preserving its character, and one of the things you try to find out early on is how do people define that character, because not everybody thinks of it the same way. But when you actually sort of get everybody's ideas down, usually you can kind of get a sense of what this coherent sense of the place is that people live in and love and care about. We want to be able to give you a plan that's forward-looking and innovative, as I said, and also something that you can actually implement, so that when you get to the end of this process and you feel like, my gosh, we spent all this money, we went to all these meetings, and we worked so hard on this, do we have a plan that we can actually say, see what that plan did for us? And that's something that we're going to try to keep in mind all throughout this process. We're very kind of implementation conscious. I've looked at a lot of very wonderful master plans that really had great ideas, and so it wasn't a problem with the ideas in the plan, but sometimes they're not quite ready for people to implement and they get frustrated, and you don't want to have that. So I think throughout this process we're always going to be trying to think about, so what can you do right now? And if you want to do some other things, what sort of capacity do you need to do that, and how do you build up to it? We are pretty bold. We're not afraid to kind of tell you what we think. We're also humble enough to know that we don't know everything. So we'll probably ask a lot of questions. I think our willingness to ask questions as much as offering opinions is one of the things that makes us different. Obviously, you want a plan that's going to help you move forward, and the way we're going to try to do that, any master plan always starts with kind of where are you today? We have to sort of understand what you have today. And so within the elements of the plan, which there are several elements of a plan, you look at land use and zoning, you look at housing, you look at economic development, you look at open space, you look at the community facilities and services that you have, you look at transportation, you look at the natural resources, the sort of natural physical fabric on which your community is based. All of those are kind of components of a plan. So for every one of those components, there will be this pretty exhaustive inventory of where are you today. And then, so that's kind of where you are. And then the other piece of it is, so where do you want to get to? What is it that you want to be? What kind of town do you want to say this is when you're still living here 10 or 15 years from now? And what are the priorities that you have out of that larger vision? And our job is then to help you figure out, here's where you are and here's where you're going without change. Here's where you want to be, and so how do you bring together a sort of policy framework that's going to work you more toward where you want to be? So that's really what a master plan is, and the final deliverable, if you will, the product, is a plan. Some people call it a book, some people call it a report. I call it a plan. And it happens to be a plan that's on paper, but it's rich with maps and it's rich with data, but it really is a guidance document. It's sort of a way for you, as you go forward, to think about, well, what is the policy framework that we said we were going to follow as we try to grow and evolve as a community? So it is true, this afternoon we took this wonderful tour. Marin did a fabulous job taking us around town, and we saw lots of things. And I wanted to just maybe give my colleagues here a chance to tell you a little bit about some of the things that we saw. So it's your turn to speak. I want people to hear from you too, so I'm not the only one who's up here kind of talking. But we went all over this town and it was wonderful. And I have to tell you, my sense going around, I'll speak first and then I'll turn it over to them. I had had this sense driving around here, this is a really sweet town. I had never been through Littleton the way I was today. I've usually sort of seen it going somewhere else, going to Groton or coming from Acton or, going to Ayr. I had never really been around sort of the nooks and crannies of this community, and I just kept having this feeling over and over again, this is a really sweet little town. So I just sort of wanted to share that. And it was sweet in all of the variety of ways that you've grown. You have these very different parts of town with different architecture. You have landscapes that are very different. Some of it's kind of rocky and rolling, and some of it's more wet, and you have these big expansive wetland areas, but it's just all in told this very kind of sweet little enclave. That was my sense. Throw it to you. Make sure you talk to the microphone. Or near it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it was really wonderful driving around. It is a beautiful town, even on a kind of a bleak March day without any leaves out, nothing really growing yet. I think we were struck by the really strong sense of place of so many different areas in town. I mean, the ponds are so beautiful, but you really get a sense of that being a unique landscape with the sort of interaction of the pond and the communities that surround the ponds.
Yeah.
The old village center is the common area, and the other sort of the depot, hamlet, some of those other areas. The sense of the rolling woodlands,
Yeah.
and then the farms, of course. A lot more farmland than I really realized.
Right.
A lot of it still very much a going concern. So you have this sort of, I guess it's what, an 18th, 19th century landscape. Very classic New England, classic Middlesex County.
Yeah.
And then, but overlaid with this, you have a different kind of landscape from the 20th century with 495 and Route 2, and then the more recent development associated with that separate transportation system. So you have the newer sort of industrial areas, the office park areas, and then, of course, the new, the Point development, which may or may not be the harbinger of the new economy, I guess.
21st century landscape.
21st century landscape. And so the question, of course, for us as consultants, and one we'll be asking you is, what are we going to totally change the old landscape and keep going with the new one? Are we going to try to modify that new landscape of highways and office parks and what they call it, lifestyle centers into something which feels more like traditional Littleton? Or are we going to try to take traditional places in Littleton like the Common and turn them into something that functions economically more like what the market is asking for in terms of the lifestyle center? So if you could, would you take the Point and put it around the Common instead of off by itself? Obviously that horses are to the barn on that one. But there's going to be another Point down the road. There's going to be more industrial and office park activity. There's going to be a lot more housing activity. So the question that we're going to be looking at is, how do we shape that? Do we need to shape it, or we just let nature take its course? But looking at the landscape, I think we saw there's extraordinary opportunities to build on what's been here historically, and that's really the value that you have here, is that sense of place and the beauty and the livability of being near the farmland and being near these wonderful historic resources. So that was very interesting.
I feel similarly, and I also was thinking about how it's my first time as well. And there's so much that you have going for you that other people talk about wanting. You have this farmland that's active, that actually produces food at the community farm that you can access, and has that beautiful open space. You have a town-owned orchard. Who has that? You have a lot of waterfront that is, a lot of private property enjoys, but you can also publicly enjoy it by even just viewing it. It's beautiful. Yeah. Then you have a wide variety of housing. Perhaps you need more variety of housing types, but you already have a good starting point of smaller starter homes or homes to downsize in, and then larger. You have apartments. You have a lot of affordable housing, even by the state standards. Then you have a lot of businesses and industry. That's a good economic base that you're growing in new and innovative ways, and you're taking into the next century, and that's a really great economic tax base for you. and you have more capacity for that. So there's so much, and you have the town center. Now that might be a little weak in some ways in terms of what you might want, but again, we don't know what you want. We only know what we saw, and we'd like to hear from you what you want, and then really we want to understand what is it that you'd like to preserve, and what is it that you'd like to change. And what do most people feel? We're not going to agree about everything, but what are the priorities? What is it that you really feel makes Littleton a special place and you want to make sure it stays that way? And what is it that you really want to change because it's just not working anymore? So those are just some of my more impressions, but give someone else a chance.
I think I might be the person on the team who has the most experience with Littleton.
That's
And
really
even-
true.
And even myself, having done a little bit of work here, I had never been on a tour as in-depth as the one that Maren took us on today, and Kirby. And being the person who's going to be working on the transportation section as well, going to the brand new commuter rail station, which I hadn't visited yet, was at the old one, haven't been to the new one, and seeing how many people were parked at the commuter rail station and how interestingly they are parked every which way.
Speaking of creativity.
Yeah, that is creative.
Creative parking. You were talking about creative financing. This is creative parking.
Exactly. So that was great to see, and not all communities have access to a commuter rail station, so that's very, very unique, and Littleton, I think, is very fortunate. But one interesting thing that Maren had brought up when we were talking about the commuter rail station was there seems to be a desire in the community for people to be able to walk, or probably maybe even more so bike to the commuter rail station. And are there safe ways in which people can do that today? Maybe not. And how could this master plan maybe lay out a vision, kind of a higher level vision for how that might happen? Similar to what Daphne was saying, the housing stock in Littleton, I had no idea how diverse it was, from small waterfront cottages to some of the brand new subdivisions to some of the larger scale multifamily developments that have happened across the town. But again, as we were sort of talking through that today on the tour, it seems like the community is aging, so are there options for seniors to downsize from maybe a single-family home if they're empty nesters, or maybe their spouse has passed on, but they want to stay in the community, and it seems like there are some options, but maybe not enough options, so that's something I think we'll definitely want to explore as we go through the process. And then the last thing I noticed was on the economic development side, we took a tour through the distribution center, and I was just blown away by the new buildings that are there. The FIBA construction that's taking place, and the Potpourri building that I think is going to be up and going soon. But when I asked the question of Martin, I said, what did the town have to do to make this happen, from extending infrastructure or giving tax breaks or something? And it sounds like one small TIF sort of was what had happened there, and the rest just kind of came around organically. And we've worked in a lot of communities, and that's normally not the case. The communities a lot of times have to shell out a lot on their end to make that kind of thing happen. So I think Littleton has a lot going for it, and it was just really, really interesting to be on that tour.
Yeah, it was great. So that's sort of a a data dump of kind of the impressions that we had this afternoon. It was really wonderful. So just a little bit about our approach. I mean, so much of community planning is really about the time that you spend with people in a variety of venues, learning what they know about the town that you can't get from data, finding out what their aspirations are for their community, and finding out what the disagreements are. And so we've kind of packaged into our approach here a very flexible, a menu, if you will, of things that we're prepared to do to help the community educate us, share with each other in a kind of structured way what those aspirations are that need to be built into the plan, and where the sort of opportunity areas are and the potential problem areas are, so that we can account for those in the plan. I mean, I think that something to kind of bear in mind about a master plan that makes it different from maybe some other types of plans is that this is really ultimately about how do you manage and shape the physical evolution of your town. So we're always going to be looking for input from you about where the problem and the opportunity areas are. And toward that end, we've planned on doing probably 3 town-wide forums over the course of the project, one of which we would very much like to do within the next few months before school gets out, so we can begin to sort of be thinking about where some of those problem and opportunity areas are, and also kind of just the status of the last master plan. toward the fall, kind of right after summer vacation and everybody's sort of, their lives are back in order, we would like to do a couple of charrettes, which Peter would lead, really kind of focusing in on maybe some key problem or opportunity areas that need to be thought about in the plan, but we need to spend some time trying to identify what those are. So between September and now, we would be, one of the functions of the townwide forum would be to try to get a handle on what maybe some places are that we should be focusing on. We're going to want to talk to people who live in different parts of town and try to get their sense of where they see the issues that the plan should address. We also do some meetings with people based on topics. Like, my experience with master plans is that there are a lot of people in the community who are interested in the plan. They don't necessarily have time to be on the committee, or the committee's already kind of populated, but they have this strength to bring. They know about the whole history of zoning, or they know the history of wetlands protection, and you want to get them into a room and find out what they know. So what I call sort of topic meetings is something else that we would be doing, and kind of looking to you folks for direction on who we should be talking to. And then also some social media presence. I understand you have a Facebook page, I think, already for the master plan here. Typically what we would do on a project like this is, if you have a web page on your town website that you want to devote to the master plan, we'll help manage that, we'll put information on it, we'll keep the calendar going and so forth. I think what you want to do is have opportunities for web presence, but not so many that people get confused, and I think that's something we're going to want to to talk about. We also like to go meet people where they are. That's Daphne standing on a sidewalk with somebody. Is that Acton?
Southbridge.
It's Southbridge, okay, yeah. So we go out to different places. I mean, sometimes I go to coffee shops at 7 o'clock in the morning where I know people are going to be, because they don't come to a public meeting, but they're always in the coffee shop, and they know stuff that you want to find out. We know from experience that that you need to do a variety of types of outreach to get people involved, because not everybody will go to the big townwide meeting. That's always the question we get, is how do we get people to come to meetings? And sometimes the question is, how do we get people to not come? But you have to be able to be willing to go and find people in different places. Parents who might go to a PTO meeting but would never come to a community-wide meeting at town hall or something, they know, they can tell you about the schools, they can tell you what's going on with kids, they can tell you how adequate the recreation fields are. They sort of know a dimension of the town. So in addition to these sort of formal ways that we would be engaging the public, I think we also want to make sure that we get out and find where the public is and meet them on their turf. So there's a variety of ways that we'll be thinking about public participation. And as I said earlier, some people often call the final product a book or a report. To me, it's a plan. It's a plan that you can open and get guidance from. And you know what else? It's a plan it's a plan for growth and change. It's a plan for preservation. It's also a plan for how do you update the plan. You're right that it's sort of a 10-year horizon, but I got to tell you, no matter how good a planning team is, something comes up that nobody expected. And if your plan doesn't have built into it a way to evaluate it and update it, even within that 10-year period, that's when plans go stale. That's when you show up in a community 12 years later and they say, our plan sat on the shelf and we didn't do anything with it. Well, sometimes it's that no evaluation process was written into that plan. So I think that's something that we particularly bring to the process as well, and that will be very much part of our effort. So that's our presentation. Give me questions, but to introduce you to us and what we're going to do, that's it.
And if it's okay with you, what I'd like to do is just go around the room.
Thank you.
Have folks offer comment, ask questions.
Sure.
And we do usually standard format. Let's just, give your name and address, please. We go around. And then, so if we want to go some kind of order, if you just want to throw your hands up, you want me to pick you out of the crowd, we can do that too.
I'm just going to grab my pen up here.
Well, let's do that. All right, James hand went up first.
Yeah, sure. You mentioned going to meetings, and
I already forgot the first spot. Name and address.
James Kennedy, 50 Gilson Road, Littleton. So I'm president of Littleton Business Association.
Yes.
I would love it if you could come to our meetings. And a lot of the members of our association, we have about 85 members, and a lot of them aren't from Littleton, but they probably spend most of their awake time right here in Littleton, maybe even more than a lot of us might commute. So we'd love it if you could stop in.
Would you repeat your last name?
Yes, James Kennedy. Thank you.
Peter.
Yes, I'm Peter Yap, and I live on Newtown Road, Missouri. basically, one thing I didn't see was any population projections. I'm not sure whether you people still do that, but I remember in the last master plan, they had 15,000, a population of 15,000 projected. And what happens when that projection is there, we start taking on large projects based on that, like the fire station, police stations, schools, things of that nature. So that's one of the things. I know there's a lot of different parts of the master plan, but to me, that's one of the most important because that's where capital expenditures get involved. So my question is to you folks, are you still doing population projections, and how are you arriving at them?
Well, there would certainly be a demographic section of the plan. We would look at sort of what are the characteristics of your population today. I think one of the things we'd want to find out from you is how much faith does the community have in existing population projections for which there are two sources. One is the State Data Center, and the other is the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. They both have population projections. So I think we kind of want to, we can look at the history and we can look at the projections, but I think we're going to need some direction from you about whether you trust those projections. Because if you do, then I'm inclined to say, then let's just use them. If you're not comfortable with them, you know, we can certainly do an age cohort survival study or something like that and do a projection for you. What I don't think we could do within the scope of this project is a detailed projection like by age, which like a school department might want something like that. But I think certainly we could do a double check for you on the existing projections that are out there. I will just, this isn't a digression, but it's actually very much in tune with your question. I worked on a master plan once where the consultant who had done the first master plan for that town in the 1960s did a projection out to 1990 for population and housing units. And the population projection was huge. And it was nowhere near accurate. It was way too high. But you know what? The projection for number of house lots was almost right on target. What happened is our household sizes got smaller. So, you know, no one in 1965 could see that we were not going to be a country where the median age of women at first marriage was 20, and where the average household size was 4 point something. I mean, no one saw that coming. So it just gets a little bit, I just want you to sort of have a little patience with yourselves that just like everybody else's households are changing, so are yours. And it might make more sense to be thinking about where housing is going to be built and how many households you think you might be serving than trying to get too far in the weeds with a population count. Because my experience is it isn't really so much population that drives demand for services as much as households. But we can certainly talk about it. And yes, there will be a projection. Whether it comes from us or MAPC or the State Data Center, that I don't know yet.
And when we did the housing production plan, MAPC did do by cohort, age groups and the like.
Yeah.
So certainly it provides us a point of departure as we go through this process.
That's what I'm thinking of, is that very study.
Jim?
Jim Carr, Elizabeth Street. What type of financial data do you build into the master plan in regards to the financial status of the town and moving forward, and as Peter said, the housing stock going up and these other big projects?
Okay. We always look at what is the fiscal condition of the community today and how did you get here. So you look at the tax base, you look at what expenditures are, you try to get a sense of how much of spending is being driven by residents versus businesses, versus things that have nothing to do with population growth. Because I can assure you that there's a certain amount of spending that goes on in every community that has nothing to do with whether you added 10 new people or 10 new children to your school district. And so you've got to sort of be able to kind of look at that. And then also and have a sense of, so, you know, how are you relative to a peer group, whatever that peer group may be. There was a reference earlier about, you know, in the list of things we wanted to ask you, who do you think your peers are? Because we're going to want to look at, well, so what shape are you in relative to some of those other communities? Ultimately, when people say to us, you know, I'm going to put my planner hat on here, people say, well, we want to make sure that X percentage of our tax base is always commercial because we're trying to buffer residents from exorbitant tax bills that they can't afford. That's fine, but one of the things we then have to be able to say to you is, so if you want to have that chunk of your tax base in some type of land use, commercial, industrial, or whatever, here's probably the amount of space that you're talking about just to generate that kind of revenue. And you then have to be able to say to us, is that the kind of community we want or not? Sometimes people say, people have an image of a tax base that they want, and they don't necessarily picture the amount of building that's involved. So we'll go there, but ultimately, you're going to have to, you, the community, are going to have to say to us, that's the Littleton we want in 20 years, or, oh my God, that's the last thing we want. Okay, but we'll look at it.
Harry?
Jared O'Leary, New Estate Road. This all sounds great about how, oh, we're going to control the destiny of the town. Well, so much of it is private property and what the landowners want to do.
Yep.
The town is currently facing one of those beautiful pieces of farmland you're talking about in the center of town. It's 61A property, and yet, for reasons unbeknown to anybody, the developer and the owners are going out of their way to ensure the town does not have its right of first refusal. The town has a demolition delay bylaw to try and preserve historic structures. It's resulted in one save. There was a case a number of years ago of a property, late 18th century house, early 19th century barn. Both in rough shape. Developer gets it, wants his 2 house lots. There was an interested buyer. The developer, however, wanted all his profits up front, totally economic, building's gone. So you can do whatever you want, you can talk whatever you want, but ultimately it's the property owners that control it. And as far as all that beautiful multifamily housing, you know where that came from. It's something called 40B. And that the town has essentially no control over.
Well, you do now because you're over 10%.
Because you're over 10%,
Yeah,
but I mean,
yeah.
it's...
Yeah.
Yes, Neil?
Neil O'Leary, 29 Woodland Drive. I'm also on the Economic Development Committee. You folks mentioned earlier, which the town has done in Littleton. We've given TIFs to IBM, Potpourri, Fiber, Curtis Wright, which is gone now. Do you have experience in other towns that you've done in seeing what TIFs are? Like,
You mean,
drive a company to come? Or tax?
RKG has done a
incentive?
lot of TIF work. RKG's done a lot of work with TIFs, with DIFs, with IQ. I mean, we've just done a lot of work with that.
Is there a formula?
For what? For how much you need to give, in other
Yes.
words? Well, I mean, there is a formula, but, you know, my experience is that those agreements get negotiated on a project-by-project basis. So there's not an easy answer to that question, I'll tell you. I think that...
That's why I asked.
Yeah, no, there's not an easy answer to that question, because sometimes it's... You got a company that you are trying to lure to your community, and they've got 3 other options, and you got to ask yourself, well, how badly do we want them here, and what are we willing to give up to get them? And so you may give up a lot in a TIF to get that company, and you might be saying later, well, why on earth did we do that? Well, it's because you got the company that you wanted, and so you have to, there's these trade-offs involved, and sometimes there are intangibles about them. Sometimes it's, we want that particular job base. We want the prestige of having that company in our town. You know, I come from the perspective that communities sometimes confuse economic development with tax-based development. And economic development is about a lot more than a tax base. So if you're getting the jobs that you want and you're deferring the full benefit of the tax revenue for good policy reasons, I'm not going to criticize you for that. We're not going to be critical of that. If you were using TIFs to excess, maybe when you didn't really need to, then that's probably a concern. But I wouldn't assume that if you feel like you're giving away the store that you necessarily did the wrong thing. Because if you got the jobs that you were trying to get into your community, that has these other intangible benefits that may matter more than how much TIF benefit the company got. It's the best answer I can give you right now.
And where we are now here in the town, a recent development is that we have a financial policy working group.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
FinCom members, Board of Selectmen, and other folks. And where we are is pretty much at a final draft as far as TIF. And we've looked at many other communities to help develop that. And that's something that soon will be presenting to both the whole FinCom
Good.
and then also the Board of
That's
Selectmen.
good. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to answer to the point something, Neil, but certainly it's going to at least help us and give us a good point of departure
Good.
as we analyze
That's
them.
super.
Jerry, hold on, let me see if anybody else first, so we get a great opportunity. Please don't be shy, folks. I'm really grateful you came out this evening. Even if it's just a comment, raise it. Yes, and as you know, I don't know all your names, so I apologize.
Julie Rupp, New Estate Road. So I guess I'd like to say some of the things that attracted me to Littleton are the small town, the open spaces, the farms. It is incredibly valuable to me to have my food within my community. It's just really amazing that we have 3, maybe more. I know of 3, 4 of them at any rate. So I think those are really great things. I can hike, I can drag my 2-year-old up Oak Hill, and I just think that's amazing. I can do that, you know, within an incredibly short drive or walk at some point. I would love to see the center of our town look more like maybe, probably a pipe dream, but more like Groton or Concord would be good examples of town centers that are pretty amazing. I know our traffic configuration and some other things are, you know, challenges for us that, you know, perhaps Concord and Groton don't have. But as like a, you know, for me, the dream would be, you know, those 2 towns would be good examples.
That's helpful to hear, you know, what people think about other towns that, yeah.
Yeah. The waterways we have here, again, it's great. I can just head to our town beach, and it's a safe place. It's an accessible place to canoe, kayak, stick my guys in the water. You know, so I really like that. That's really enjoyable. Parking at the train station is a little tough, as you saw. It would be nice to be able to bike. I work in Westford, basically just down 110 in Westford. I fear for my life when I ride my bike to work. It doesn't happen much, and some of that is, you know, within Littleton, up to the Littleton border. So I think our bike accessibility could be, you know, could be better. I'm excited. I'm getting a sidewalk on my road soon. Also, going back to the waterways, I've noticed recently a lot of the developments in town, we're awfully close to wetland buffers, or we're filling in wetlands, and it seems, you know, I don't have data. It's just me as a, you know, as a citizen, a relatively informed citizen, kind of looking out my window saying, hey, like that, you know, that definitely was a wetland there. So that kind of concerns me, because if we keep filling in our wetlands, we impact the health of our groundwater, we impact the health of our ponds. Our ponds are not big. You know, in Mill Pond, I guess we're talking about getting back to the feasibility study for restoring Mill Pond. You know, that's a pond that's been impacted by sedimentation, you know, nutrient loading from very fine, but you do the exact same thing when you reduce the capacity of your wetlands. Right. So that's something that I think, you know, maybe we could do a little better on. But again, that's just me driving around. I don't necessarily have data. It's just, hey, they're filling that in too. Okay. And I think, you know, we have 2 and 495. We have the train. I think that's why we're attracting some of these businesses we're attracting, which is a really great thing. You know, at the same time, it also feels like, you know, holy cow, there's a ton of development, and, you know, I don't know. It seems like a framework would be really useful to try to make some, you know, make decisions, and so our decision makers can feel comfortable making the decisions that
That they have to make, right.
Yeah, so that's what makes sense.
Thank you. Great.
Hi, Dina Flockhart, Gilson Road. I was on the last master plan committee, and that's actually, I did planning and environmental research. One of the things that happened with the last master plan committee is the consultant changed partway through, and at that point we felt that they took everything done by the master plan committee and tossed it out the window.
Oh dear.
And we're hearing the same recommendations now, the same wants. We want to look like Concord or Groton. We want a walking community. More people want town water. People want sidewalks. That we heard then. And I felt we got a master plan that didn't really reflect that. And I would very much like to see it go differently this time.
Just a clarification, it didn't reflect what people wanted?
It didn't reflect what people wanted. It was very much boilerplate. And having interned at a planning group, because I have my master's degree in regional planning, it was boilerplate.
Well, you don't have to worry about that with us.
That would be wonderful.
We like to write. We actually do, but
Hold on, one time. Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's Paul Herrero. I'm on King Street, Littleton here, obviously. I'm also on the Littleton Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee, and one of the things that we're very concerned about is, as people have mentioned, is being able to ride safely with bicycle, walking to the communities, and being approved for complete streets. We'd like to make sure that that's part of the master plan, and that's somehow incorporated completely into that, so that when new developments go up, that they do look at making sure they have sidewalks, sight lines on roads, making it safer for people to walk and bicycle and exercise and do what they want as they can. Thank you.
thank you very much.
Nita, do you want to add to that? Or
I wanted to add to that.
Okay.
One of the things that's happening now is because of budget, the school feels that, I believe it's after 8th grade, the students have to pay to ride the bus.
Yeah, that's just about everywhere.
After
And-
6th grade.
Sixth
Yeah.
grade.
After 6th.
So you've got your 11 and 12-year-old who has to cross 3 highways to get to school. And, now there's a light at the intersection of 119 and 495. But I don't feel comfortable sending my kid bicycling or walking down 119.
Can't say that I blame you.
Yeah, I live on Gilson Road, on the,
Yeah.
3 houses from the edge of town.
Yep.
So.
Don?
Yeah, Don McIver, 43 Foster Street. I guess my background is I'm interested in good planning, served on conservation commissions and cities and towns, here Board of Health, Planning Board, fought hard to get the funding for this, the Finance Committee,
Yep.
which objected and saying it was needed. Did experience the last master plan, which ran out of funding, which was a major problem. And yeah, we tried very hard to get people to show up at presentation as Sue Moses brought her to town for preserving rural character. No elected official showed up. Tried to get people to go to a Randall event in Westford. No elected official showed up. And tried to do a lot to preserve the rural character, and also in favor of solid economic development that's appropriate. So trying to do both those. And even though I pushed very hard for the Finance Committee to show up for the funding for this, people come to me afterwards, so a dozen people say, why do this? We put together a master plan, no one's following it. And I know there's a problem with Massachusetts zoning and master plans. There's no
sure is.
in it, and there's no question about it, but also there doesn't seem to be any leadership to follow it. And in particular, as mentioned here, one of the main things is protect the agricultural land. And when a parcel came up, extra funding is needed, did fundraising from the land trust, which I run, and also the Church of Science. They were spread thin because they couldn't afford to build there. They raised funding to preserve the agricultural land to adjoin to the next area. And now that's come up and that's being ignored. People are knuckling under and serving the developer who wants to put in housing and athletic fields over prime agricultural land. So the question is, why bother with this? And I don't have a good answer to give people. And these aren't members of the choir. These are like a dozen separate people saying, why bother if no one's going to pay any attention to it? So that's one of my major concerns.
I've noticed more in the last 12 to 15 years of practice that a conversation has crept into master planning that wasn't there 30 years ago, and it's what is the capacity of our government? How does our government function? Do we have a governance structure that can actually carry out this plan? And, I actually was happy to see that starting to show up in RFPs for master plans, because I'm a public policy
Such as
person,
ours.
right? So, right, I know, I'm a public policy person, and I couldn't understand 30 years ago how you could possibly do a master plan for a town and expect them to not look at how do they make decisions. Because if you don't look at that, then you're maybe giving them the best plan in the world. I don't care if it's boilerplate or whatever, it may have great ideas, but do they really have the governance framework that they need to do it? I mean, that's one question, and I think it's important that you have that in this plan. But I'll also say this, it is a plan. It's not a mandate. And there are going to be times when, no matter how much everybody agreed that something was the right thing to do, the resources didn't exist or something got in the way. I'm not justifying a problem, I'm just saying that happens even with the best plans, that sometimes something just can't be done in the timeline that it needs to happen. It might have been a great idea for it to come up 5 years later, but right now it's not. And I think that is when a community needs to be able to say, well, that doesn't mean the whole plan is useless.
Yeah, sometimes it's vested interest, moneyed interest working behind the scenes.
Sometimes it's that, but this is why I'm saying I think one of the things you've got to have in a master plan in order to have it mean anything is that process for evaluating where are we with this plan, what's worked so far, what is not working, what do we need to change to get this back on track. That is a missing piece in a lot of master plans. There's just this assumption that we've got this implementation schedule, it says what we need to do for the next 10 years, and we're going to do it. And oh my God, now in year 3, the whole thing's falling apart, and we're just going to put it away. You have to have a system for evaluating that plan and having an open conversation in a room like this. Do we need to modify this plan? Because otherwise you can miss a beat and say the whole plan's useless. That's not necessarily true.
But sometimes it's the principles that are there that are easier to follow if there's interest in following it.
Right.
That's where it hits the road.
And I understand that, and I agree with you. I'm just saying that sometimes something happens, and you can't assume that then the whole plan is invalid. It's getting over those humps that I think really are the test of, is this plan going to help us? It's not that everything in the plan happens exactly the way you wanted it to. Life just doesn't work that way. But can the plan, at a sort of 5,000-foot level, help you get over those humps and continue to function as a community and make good decisions?
The way to put that. Lisa?
Alicia Day, Lake Sneaker.
Hi.
Hi,
Sorry.
28 Westchester Drive, and I'm the recreation director for the town.
Welcome.
Hi. So I have to say that I'm really excited to hear, all of the idea of, working through this throughout the year. And I'm biased, clearly, because I'm Parks and Rec.
You're supposed to be.
I know. But, I have to say that forefront. But I just want to, have that idea of, I'd really love to see what the feedback is for Parks and Rec, if, that's part of this plan. You have to forgive me because I did not plan on coming as a resident, not like as recreation director hat. But, we're working on the open space and recreation plan currently. And I think it's fantastic that we have all this conservation land. There's like 14% of the town, land that we have is conservation, and that's amazing. However, on the recreation side, there's like, I don't know if it's 0.3 or 0.3, or sorry, it's one of those two for actual like park facilities.
Yep.
So it's just one of those things, again, I'm biased because that's what my job is for, to kind of keep in mind and think if there's a way to be able to, find out if the town is wanting more as far as parks is concerned.
Yep.
Definitely part of it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Hi, I'm Megan Ford, and I live over here at 28 Shattuck Street, right across the street. I moved to town about 10 years ago, and because I'm right here close to town hall, it's easy for me to get involved with town stuff. And back in 2009, I was at one of our big town meetings where they were trying to determine whether or not to form a sewer study, because based on the last master plan recommendations, the lack of sewer in our town common was a big issue, and so it was a recommendation to study whether or not it would be feasible to put a sewer in our common, our town common area. And I ended up joining the committee as a citizen at large, and I am now the chair of that committee. And so for about 3 or 4 years, that committee met and did a ton of work, and the end result was a really amazing feasibility study that was pretty much tabled and hasn't been talked about for about a year or so, if not more.
Why?
Well, are you aware of how much controversy sewer can bring up?
Oh, yes.
So I'm sure you are. So it's a hot topic, and it was a very hot topic in this town. I have no idea why it was actually ultimately tabled. I could speculate, but the Board of Selectmen decided not to bring it to the town and have the town vote on it, and then it kind of got pushed aside. But I have to say that when I've only been in town for 10 years, so I don't know as Dina Flockhart, who sat on this committee last time, but I was always under the impression that the last master plan was based on what the town voted and what the town wanted, and that the town wanted to have certain characteristics, like they had images that they actually picked and said this is like the kind of town center we want, and that without a sewer we really couldn't have well, some of the businesses, some of the amenities, things that that the town wanted. So that was why we were supposed to study it. We have a wonderful feasibility study. It's complete. So I don't know if you could use that or if that can be
We'll want to
part
take
of
a
this.
look at that.
Yeah, and I'd be happy to share that. It's all available. It's all public. But also, that's probably something, and parking is another thing that I know is always brought up to me. And people want to tie the two together, but you know, I was just focused on the sewer part and the committee that I was a part of.
Okay. Thank you.
George? George, did you have a hand up? Not anointed Jerry. You know that.
No, I'm waiting my turn.
Anybody else? Jerry, your turn.
Okay, there's two comments. One on TIFs. A lot of the TIFs in this town have really gone to repopulate vacant buildings. IBM was like that. And you say Curtis Wright got a TIF? I thought they've been here forever.
They moved. They're gone.
You know, the next big vacant property is the old Very Fine plant, and I presume you folks are working on trying to do something there.
There is a company who looks to populate that building.
Awesome.
But then also, absent their ability to populate it, they're quick to churn it also. So we're right now in the process with this company right now is that they're looking to populate it.
Yeah.
With a similar business.
Right, the kind of the negative side of TIFs is, in some ways, they hurt the small businesses because the folks generally that get them are the big companies. And you know, it's a win-win for the town because, you know, it helps bring the business in, but it does, in a free enterprise sense, kind of hurt the little guy. And the other thing, a few comments on sewer. I've kind of followed this, and I think one of the concerns about sewering the common, or a couple of them, one was opening it up to unrestrained development, the other was liability. And that is, ultimately, the town would be the one holding the bonds, and, well, if something goes wrong, yeah, the district theoretically could sell, but if something goes wrong, the townspeople are going to eat the cost. Also, it's benefiting a few landowners in a small area. Also, I think by their loading calculations, there are two facilities that are going to account for like 75% of the loading. In other words, the town would be picking up the sewering costs for two large private developments. And it's like, you put that all together and people naturally are going to get nervous. And another thing with that plan is, in some ways it was going to be this grandiose thing of, oh, we're going to have a sewer system and a fertilizer factory and use the biogas to generate electricity and you're trying to do things more sophisticated than Deer Island, which is, what, 1,000 times what the size of Littleton's population would be? And you put all that together and people naturally are going to get nervous.
Well, we'll take a look at it.
Fair enough.
Rick.
Rick Finley, 46 Beaverbrook Road. I came to Littleton in 1974 and was quickly on the Conservation Trust, which has been involved in land preservation since then, and I'm continuing to do it. Just your interest in trails to the station. Just want to let you know that I've been working with the pedestrian and bicycle committee, and we have probably 4 different trail locations pretty much located now, so I'm happy to work with you on that.
Right, we're going to want to talk to you. Thank
Sure.
you. Thank you.
Peter first.
I'd like to add on to what Megan was saying from my experience on the Board of Health. And when you ask people, what they'd like to do, they always say, oh, we'd like to see the common preserved. But what most people don't understand is the high water level. It's also very small areas. And if something isn't done with the common will not exist as it is today. It just is not going to, it's not going to be able to do that. So when people get ideas of what things should be,
Yep.
there's other factors involved in it, and Megan brings those out of what they were actually looking at and doing all this work, and it goes nowhere. And the perception was, and Jerry brings out some good points, but the perception was it was going to affect a lot of people. Yet in Westford, there's 25 sewage treatment plants.
That's right, there are.
For individual housing, businesses, and...
Yeah, they have a lot of package plants in Westford. Yep.
No, that sounds nice.
Yeah, so earlier I mentioned I was on a business association, but I mean, I'm a resident too, so I would love to see more indoor places for kids to play. More indoor facilities for our kids to play, larger rec spaces that are indoors. I know currently most of our kids go to the town over Acton. They have this really big facility there called Teamworks. And it's a great place to go for indoor sports for our kids to play. And with all this space, I don't see any reason why we can't have something right here in town for indoor rec in the winter, especially. Most of our school gyms were really built to be very small, and we definitely see a need for more space.
Okay.
All right, you see, I actually know some of you, but then there's folks in the audience I don't know. Now, also, just a little bit of geography lesson. This isn't Miami, Florida, is it? As he hides the U. Please don't take it as that I'd be picking on you, and if you'd rather not even respond. But if you'd introduce yourselves, please, because you're new faces to me, and certainly be interested as relatively newcomers, at least as far as I would know, is to what your thoughts are at this point, and what you may want to share.
Sure. Tony Blanco, 38 Dahlia Drive. We've lived here about 4 years, and I've done almost the day. So I would like to say that one of the things that attracted us to the town was the open area. I am from Florida, and there's a lot more character here than there are in anywhere that I lived in Florida that's been built mostly since I was born. So I would like to see something along those lines to preserve some of that character and keep some of that. When we have family come and visit, they always comment on how beautiful the area is, and I would like to see, some sort of provision for protecting existing forest area, land lots. If you're going to be doing economic new building and that kind of thing, maybe focus on older buildings and refurbishing those or rebuilding those as opposed to cutting down and deforesting property to create more. But we do love the area very much, so we would like to see that type of thing continue so that we can continue enjoying the area that we do, because we use the outdoor facilities, the lake, the trails all the time, walk the dogs, so it's a wonderful area.
Well, thanks for coming this evening, and thanks for sharing that.
I'm Stacy Blanco, 38 Valley Drive. I just wanted to add, I'm from Texas, so that's nice and flat and just development after development after development. And that was fine growing up, but one thing we love about being here is the small town feel. I mean, you know most people in the room, and I don't, so hello everybody. But it's great to have the small town feel. I love the Third Thursdays events in the summer. That's one of my favorite parts of the whole town. And I would hate to see that go away I understand things have to be done to the common, but I'd love to keep it as like the small town center town. We do have a dog and we love taking trails, but I also commute and I take the first train in the morning to make sure I get a parking spot. So I don't have to be at work at 6:30, but I'm at work at 6:30. So it would be nice if there was a way that I could ride my bike to the train station, but without getting rid of like the nature that we already have. So trying to work around that would be really nice.
Everything.
Oh, we want everything.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
I'm Rena Oldflower from 1 Orchid Drive, and I have lived here for many years, and I'm a walker. So I would like to see more sidewalks and trails like other towns have, but nevertheless, our Littleton is the best, including the center of Littleton. I would like to have that preserved too. And I like all the activities that happens there on Thursdays and other days too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Mentioning the commuter rail, there's actually a bus that comes into town about once an hour during the day, goes to IBM. It's coming from Gallagher's terminal in Lowell. If some sort of partnership could be formed to extend that so it went to the Littleton train station and back again, so that there was some bus service. Right now, if I have a customer who wants to come out from Cambridge, they have to go to Lowell and then take the bus to me. If there was a connection between the two, I mean, I know that Market Basket is having a great time because it can bring workers out from Lowell and in places where it's cheaper to live. That's the sort of partnership that you know, if there were a bus that went to the train station, you wouldn't have to ride your bike. You might still want to, but it might cut down on some of the other people taking cars, and it'd certainly be better on a rainy day.
Joe, you want to address that just a little bit, please?
Joe Knox, 10 Brandy Hall, also the Board of Selectmen. What you pointed out is something that our board has been working on now for a number of years, and it probably will finally start happening. They've been working on it with the state and with a number of local towns, so we'll have a cross-connect between the towns of the train station. Will have a possible bus that would go to Boxborough, go to the Common, and things like that. So it is something that we're very aware of and something that we're working on all the time. And one thing I want to point out to your group, yes. I really appreciate all the comments you made right at the very beginning, because I think everyone in this room, as a Littleton resident, I've been here my whole life, I've seen all the changes. I'd like to see it preserved as much as it can too. It's a very hard thing to do, and people sometimes have the wrong concept that we're trying to put things where they shouldn't be, and that's not at all. We appreciate, we being myself and my family, and we appreciate what's here. We'd like to keep it just like you said, because you mentioned how unique it was, and you had a nice feel for the town. I think that people in this room have that same feeling, and we'd like to preserve that as much as possible. But we also know how tricky it is. Jerry pointed out landowners have their rights to sell, and things we don't have control over. So it's a balance we'd like to keep. We're going to rely on the master plan. Hopefully that you'll point out things that can be done, that we can do in the future. But I just want to once again comment on your comments, because that's, I think, how a lot of us feel that this town should try to stay, if possible. The other thing is, too, as far as farms go, I mentioned it way back in the 80s, too, is that our biggest, best planner is our farm owners. And if we should lose some of those large farms now, that would change the whole character of the town. And that's how important it is to keep those farms here, because we all appreciate going down the street and seeing all that open landscape. If we lose those, then we lose that. As we have seen in local towns have changed, their whole outlook in my lifetime, towns around us have changed completely. So it's nice to hear people who just moved here appreciate what we have, and we're still trying to hold on to that.
Right.
And to Nina's point, I'm trying to expand a little bit on what Joe said. Keith Bergman, our town administrator, has been working tirelessly with MBTA. And some of you may know, and if not, we now have reverse commute, and our first train is now 7:13, am I remembering correctly? 7:10. 7:10, excuse me, thank you, Jim. Where before it was almost 2 hours later than that. That helps for your particular circumstances where folks come from Cambridge, as you mentioned.
They still have to get from the train to the center of town.
True, and it's incremental, and I apologize for that, but that's the best we are at this point, is there are some incremental steps being taken, and the big one was getting the MPTA to come in earlier into town, and then even now out to Fitchburg, so the entire line is opening up. Crosstown Connect that Joe mentioned, we've been in partnership with the state. We were some of the very earliest ones to get grants from the state to be working on this. So It's incremental, there's no doubt about it. We're nowhere near where we want to be. The parking lot's not big enough. We don't have enough transportation for train station, center of town, that sort of stuff. But those are things that we're asking you to help with, as Nina brought up, so thank you. Don?
Yeah, Don McGovern, also been Commuter Rail Committee. It's only taken 20 years of Senator Pam Reeser, former Senator Pam Reeser, to put in the double tracking and get the reverse commute. And that was started 20 or more years ago. And one of the things that would deal with the parking lot situation, if there was actually a commuter van or bus service that went from the Foster Street train station up to the higher end of Foster Street, down Taylor Street, to the Depot Center, which should really be a village center and needs some help, up around, across the rail tracks in King Street, by Indian Hill Music and whoever it's going to become in a couple of years they're going to be leaving, and by the High School, and then up by IBM. That way you get the really commuter rail where still people come from Cambridge and Somerville to work there. And IBM has been running their own bus systems all their life and stuff. So you get those people come in, it would really service a lot of the nodes that are important and the businesses that are there. And hopefully that's one of the results of the cross-town transit. So in some ways you eliminate some of the parking issue because people can park remotely and then get a transportation link. And you also serve the businesses. And IBM has invested a lot in 3,000 folks at this point, and there's talk about putting up another building. It's the largest software facility for IBM in North America.
What I'd like to do now, if I may please, is I just want to go around the table with the committee members, and then Lisa, you'll be the first one afterwards, okay?
Okay.
So with thoughts or comments as to what we've heard this evening, Joe?
Joe Ficacello, I'm on Bumblebee Lane, over here in Middleton, been here for 4 years. And I think everybody's kind of said out there exactly why I wanted to be part of this group here. And I think most importantly, and what you said, is the ability for the plan to be flexible and understand that there's a lot of stuff working, and how can we make that eventually work for the town.
Renato?
Renato Nakagomi. I live here for 9 months. and I intend to live here for 40, if possible. I'm almost 40 years old. So, yeah, I mean, everybody said that what I was thinking, like they say, I came here because I was born in Brazil, and I came here and the landscape is beautiful. And everything else fits perfectly, matches, and the people here are nice, so I want to keep that thing.
I want to piggyback on just for 1 minute, please.
Go ahead.
And that is, you have not been in town too little amount of time to participate. Or in Joe's case, too long.
Mike Fontanella, I'm on the Littleton School Committee. I'm just excited that this is the most people we've had. We've been a year into the process. This is the most turnout we've had in a meeting. And I think the other meetings that we're going to have are going to be even more interesting than this one. So if we get this many people at this one, I'm excited to see what's going to happen as we finally get a chance to reach out to the public and have them actively engage. And I was looking at the timeline and thinking about we're already a year in, and we've only got a year to go, and it's going to go by faster than we can possibly imagine, especially because the first year really took a long time to get through. That's how I feel. But I think it's going to be a great process, and I appreciate everybody who's came out tonight and started to kind of draw the lines in the sand, and I emphasize sand, not in permanent, because it will move. And I think as long as we're all open to that, I think it'll be a great process.
I'm John, 19 Ernest Drive. I've been here since '84, actually '85, and I listened to what you guys have said, and a lot of that I do share with the same way. And interesting. You seem like interesting to work with, so it seemed like a lot of fun. So that's all I have.
Listen.
Melissa, Board of Selectmen. I also would like to thank everyone who came out tonight. Great to see your faces. Thanks to Maren, by the way, who sounds like you put on a great tour. So thank you for that.
Awesome.
Thank you. Awesome. For the consultants for your presentation, and looking forward to working with you. So my comment would be, you know, as selectmen, I think as of late especially, we hear a lot of comments like, it feels like we have to compete with, you know, open space versus recreation or economic development versus, you know, preserving, you know, agriculture or whatever it might be. And so I'm really looking forward to this helping us set our priorities as a town and kind of coming together and figuring out these are the top things that we want to do and making a path forward. So I'm psyched again, really glad to see everyone here.
Hi, I'm Paul Glavy, currently on the Finance Committee. I'm tickled with where we're at tonight because dating back a few years ago when we were working through our Littleton 300th anniversary process, I made a strong pitch that this was the right time to update our master plan. I was involved with that as well years ago, and you know, I'm happy that it had so much support from the Finance Committee, the Selectmen, the Planning Board over the past few years to fund it, and actually there's been a consensus support for doing this process. I think that bodes well, and I think tonight we've hit 3 important milestones. 1, we've got the right consultants on board to work with. 2, we're getting the participation from the townspeople that we've been hoping to have all along. And 3, I think we're hitting all the right notes on what's being said. So let's keep the positive going.
Peter Scott, Planning Board, Scott Road. Been here 50-something years. I agree with 1, 2, and 3 of his statements. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I'm pretty good. All set. Thank you.
As Mike mentioned, we've been going about a year, and it had seemed like a little slow trudging as we were going along, laying what we thought was some good groundwork. And the good groundwork was to ensure that we were already starting to receive some input. And part of the process we did have is we had the various boards and committees from throughout the town, amongst some other folks that did come to our meetings, and then help us prepare for searching for the right consultant. And certainly we feel we've found that. We made a rather extensive search, put the RFP, request for proposal, out, and the ones that we did receive back gave quite a bit of scrutiny. And in essence, the selection subcommittee that recommended to the full committee here and then to the planning board, it kind of came down to this. Which one of the consultants feels best for Littleton and can best serve our needs here in the town? And we really felt that RKG is that. Judy's committed to being the point person throughout the entire process. And Nina's point as far as being changing consultants halfway through, we certainly don't anticipate that happening, and definitely hope it does not happen. So we're comfortable with a good core group of people. So, all right, Lisa, you had a point?
Yeah, Lisa Quinn, 5 Pine Road. I'm also on the Economic Development Committee. And one of the things that we've talked about is the empty office space that we have in town and making that a priority to filling that area and making it attractive for companies to fill that area.
Right. And I appreciate hearing that. I mean, that's a good example of we need just a lot of input from you folks about where are the problems and where are the opportunities, so we can kind of get some direction and focus in this plan. Because sometimes you can't fix everything, but you sort of want to make sure you fix the things that really need to be fixed or address those things that need to be addressed.
Our Chairman of the Board of Selectmen, Jim Carr.
Thanks, PJ. So to piggyback on what Lisa was saying, we have done some overlay districting in town. So I'd like to see or have that included in the master plan in regards to how it worked. Mm-hmm. Did the overlay districting help us, which I think we all know as far as the point it did. Mm-hmm. But up in New Estate, in where Lisa is talking about, all the way down Taylor Street, is another portion that the Board of Selectmen have been talking about doing some type of overlay district up there. And, you know, I think Melissa put it right when there's only so much time.
Yeah.
And our agendas from week to week, you know, we're going to have 4 meetings in a row. And it just gets bigger and bigger. So to have a plan, a map, so we can refer to it and say, okay, we need to do this year in our selectman year. Mm-hmm. To move this plan forward. Right. So my point being, overlay districting, those areas of town that Board of Selectmen have been looking at, and some other ideas folks in town may have, I think is very important to also be an integral part of the plan.
Eric, you had a point?
Yeah, Paul, I was wondering if you could ask the audience, since there are a number of people here who haven't been at previous meetings, how did they hear about tonight's meeting? Is that something we are very interested in? Sort of the best ways to
Yeah, us
forward
too.
Okay, so, Stacy.
I got an email that said, don't forget to come to this meeting that I had never heard of before, so I was like, all right, I'll come.
Do you remember who sent it?
That's what I'm checking right now.
I don't know.
Okay.
You've been hacked.
From Littleton.
Okay, good, the email blast from the Littleton town.
Yeah.
So good, so thank you.
I got one too.
Via the town.
I actually opened it.
Yeah, hi, Justin McCarthy from Stony Stream. I think you guys do a great job with the Facebook page, that's how I heard about tonight's meeting. But I just wanted to express with the master plan, I guess my primary concern would be the school system. So I've been in town for 6 years, raising a young family, we're just getting into the school system. So I don't even really know, what the infrastructure is like. But I grew up in Westford, and I just got through the school system before they had the big boom there.
Yeah.
And grades behind me went to school in trailers. Nice trailers, but trailers. And now, in the next couple of years, Westford's probably talking about potentially closing a school. So I just would like the master plan to take a hard look at the school system and make sure that we're in lockstep with any sort of potential population growth that the town's going to experience, because Littleton is a great town. That's like, I feel like Littleton's what Westford used to be, and that's why we live here. And the better town we are, the more people that are going to want to live here. So we might not be able to stop the population growth, and we just want to make sure that our kids get what we hoped that they were going to get when we moved here.
All right, so we heard Facebook and the town listserv. Other ways that you've heard of this meeting?
I got an email from the Littleton Master Plan Steering Committee.
Jim in the back.
I got one from Dawn.
Okay.
I did resend out stuff.
Thank you. Jim?
Yeah, Paul, just before you close. Jim Barrosano, 22 Deer Run Road. I'm on the Clean Lakes Committee, and I just want to make sure that our lakes, our aquifer, and our wetlands give it a high priority. I know there's a lot of pressure on development in the community and housing for 55 plus, et cetera. But it's very important. We have probably the best water for many, many towns in the area, and we want to maintain that high level of water quality. And we're constantly dealing with the lakes, invasive species of plants and things of that nature. So just so that it's on the records, that's very important to the community and to us.
Thank you.
And resent, put information on the Conservation Trust website and Facebook site. We put notices
So
there.
your Facebook page and
You have a
conservation
Facebook
website?
page?
Yeah, we have both, website and
Thank you.
Facebook.
It's always helpful to us to know, like, what are people paying attention to in the community, where are they getting their information?
Nina?
I walked into the town clerk's office to find out why I got a negative property tax bill.
Why would you do that?
Apparently the assessor's office decided I had gone out of business.
And you went in?
I'm like that.
All right, thank you.
But yeah, that
So,
was the only place I heard about it, was there was a sign on the desk there.
Jim?
Should find me dead.
Jim?
There was the mailing, the flyer that you guys had sent out. I believe it was the electric bills. So I'm sure folks heard about that. But to talk about Jim, talking about the water, Board of Selectmen have been dealing with the EPA regulation for stormwater.
Yeah.
So I guess, I don't know if you're going to get that into that depth of.
Well, at least we'll look at the regulatory framework that you have.
Take a look at.
What issues are, yes.
Sure.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Vanessa Strong, 59 Desert Road. I've lived here for about 20 years. Worked at an economic forecasting firm, and now I work at a management consulting firm. With these guys on the Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee. I wanted to ask some questions or state, reiterate what they've said. I'm not a big fan of the strip mall, all over the place, so I appreciate the point in having it all in one spot. That was really good planning, I thought. Have you dealt with towns our size with the massive amount of highways that come through and a commuter rail. It seems like we're fairly unique in that. We're so small, but have a big responsibility to keep those highways functional, and then the commuter rail as well. So we want sidewalks. Lots of people tell us about their sidewalk issues. We have handicaps and people of all different abilities that want to get around town. So we want to make sure we address that. And do you have a plan for like state and federal funding? So as part of the master plan, is there a way to work with the state and a way to work with the federal government so that we're always looped into any possible like funding possibilities or something that would help the town?
Mm-hmm. Okay. I was trying to think, people always ask us, have you worked in a town like ours? And I have to tell you, I think I said this in the interview, so pardon me if I'm repeating myself, but I've worked in something like about 130 towns at this point in Massachusetts, and I've yet to work in two that were the same. I just know how to start with that. But I've certainly worked along much of 495, and you're not the only community I've been in where there's been an issue about just a lot of roadway crossing through that community. Not necessarily the lot of roadway plus the rail, but close to that. And I mean, I can think of a couple of towns where literally the towns were sort of almost cut in thirds because there was an old roadway and then there was 495 and there's a river. I mean, they've all sort of got these issues that just make in-town circulation a real challenge. So, I mean, I can't say I've seen exactly the pattern that's here, but I've seen weird patterns. Let me just put it that way. So, I think that in the implementation plan for the master plan, or the implementation program, anything that involves an expenditure over and above what you're doing now, we would certainly identify or attempt to identify potential sources that could supplement what the town is spending now. The problem with that, I just want to be honest with you, programs come and go. Honest to God, if you looked at 30 years of cherry sheets in Massachusetts, you would see more programs that existed in 1980 that are gone. And I mean, you can't even line them up because spreadsheet after spreadsheet because programs come and go. So all we can do is try to identify this is stuff that exists today, or these are agencies that are involved in what you're trying to do. But I would not want to deceive you into thinking that somehow the programs we name today are still going to be there 5 years from now, because they may not be. But certainly trying to alert the town to the extent that needs any alerting. I mean, I think you've done pretty well here, frankly, from what I've heard. But we would certainly attempt to identify places that you could look to supplement, or perhaps even replace, but usually supplement your own expenditures, your own resources. We would do that. I'm not a fan of strip malls either, by the way. But sometimes we find them because the zoning is messed up. You know, you're nodding, you know what I'm going to say. When you find these really skinny commercial districts and crazy parking requirements and wetlands right behind the really skinny commercial district, that's a prescription for a strip. And you find them all over the place, so.
And Paul, I just wanted to let you know there was really good intra-board communication. Our board heard about this meeting from the master plan meeting on Facebook, so it was.
That's super. Thank you.
Ed?
Ed Mullen, Grist Mill Road, also on the planning board.
Yeah.
And Jim kind of stole my thunder as far as talking about overlay district, because a lot of times when we're sitting on the board and the proposal comes before us, sometimes we have no choice to approve it because it's by right. So we just try to control, maybe make some recommendations, maybe ask for a cluster development as opposed to using all the land.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the more direction we have with the zoning bylaws in development, then I think we could be a more effective board.
Yeah.
So I'd be looking for more direction.
We will have a lot to say, I'm sure, about zoning. I mean, it's something that a couple of us have a real passion for. So there'll be a pretty thorough assessment of the zoning in here. And, you know, whether an ultimate recommendation is another overlay district or fix the zoning that exists there now, I'm not prepared to comment on that. Right. But certainly we will look at, I don't know how you can do a master plan without looking at zoning. Because at some point you're saying, well, these are the spaces that matter to us, and these are the spaces where there are opportunities, and here are the spaces where we got to do something, and the zoning doesn't get you there. And if you don't fix that, then that's another way that a plan doesn't get implemented. So you'll hear about zoning.
Right. So, and one last thing, because everybody got to talk about what they love about Littleton.
Yeah.
What I love about Littleton is this is where my wife grew up, and it's been a wonderful time raising our children here. And I hope it stays this way for my children to raise their children here, so we don't plan on transplanting once they grow up and move.
Right.
This is where we want to be till the end, so.
Thank you.
I love Littleton.
And just one final thing to look at is maybe transfer development rights. We did bring in Joel Russell, and Paul actually was sole elected official at that presentation 25 years ago. But Sue Moses also talked about it.
Better than mine.
And it's done well in Groton. It's
Yes, it
taken
has.
a while.
It has.
And
Yeah.
that's something that I think would help us, and we should look at it. And their way of doing it versus Barnstable, some of the other crazy things makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. It has worked there, well there?
Yes,
I worked on Groton's master plan, so I
It's
know that
taken
pretty
well,
well.
but, you know, to talk to Michelle Collette, who's...
I worked on their master plan. I
Yeah.
mean, it has worked well. It's also been very challenging for them.
Yes,
too.
but it sort of figured its way through.
Yep.
And now it's a viable tool.
George?
Well, thank you, Paul. I just had George Clancy, Green Needles Road. Before I moved to Littleton, I lived in Boston, and my wife and I were involved in the Main Streets program that Mayor Menino had brought to the neighborhoods of Boston. And the idea was to revitalize the local business districts. And it had success in some parts of Boston, others not so much. We lived in Hyde Park. It really didn't fly in Hyde Park. We had a big parking problem. But it had a lot of success, I think, in Roslindale Village. And so I guess I'm wondering whether the consultant has had any experience with the Main Streets program and whether they think it could help us in terms of our concerns about preserving and enhancing the common area. So that was my...
I had a fabulous experience with the National Main Street Center when I was the Community Development Director in Plymouth, which was a long time ago. I was a much younger woman back then. And the state of Massachusetts was still part of the National Main Street Center. So those of us who participated in the downtown revitalization program back in the late 1980s and early 1990s had the benefit of access to the National Main Street Center. And they would come in and do an assessment. It was a 3-day, very intensive sort of thing. They would come back and make recommendations, and then you kind of sort of got as much technical assistance from them on an ongoing basis as the state was willing to pay for. Not long after that, Massachusetts sort of withdrew, it no longer was a member of the National Main Street Center, and so the Department of Housing and Community Development has a downtown revitalization program, but it's not directly connected to the National Main Street Center. That's not saying you can't get assistance from them, but you also can't get any financial assistance from the state for it. But they're really wonderful. I mean, they are great.
I'm actually working with Hyde Park Main Streets at the moment.
Oh,
and we just started a cultural asset mapping. So basically, instead of looking at what's missing, really dig deep into identifying what's there and help build capacity by connecting these assets, whether they be people, organizations, historic resources, natural resources. And we just started the process, but it looks promising.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to begin bringing this to a close for us this evening. And I'm going to tell you my motivation. This particular committee and the effort that we're going through is extraordinarily important to me personally and to my wife. We moved here, and it's almost right now 12 years to the day, and we moved from Hawaii.
Wow.
We had an opportunity, quite frankly, to live any place on the planet we chose that was reasonably safe. New England is where we wanted to come back to, and this was the area we came, and we picked Littleton. It took me quite a while as we were going around house hunting, and I really went out on a limb because she was still in Hawaii, my wife that is, when I put the purchase and sale agreement down.
Wow, that was brave.
And, you know, better lucky than good, and I got lucky.
Hey, we all won the lottery that day, fella.
So, we love it here. And as you've all expressed this evening for various reasons, I think we share all those same reasons in some way, shape, or form. Now, there is a quiz. Okay? Unlucky, you came this evening, so there is a quiz. And the quiz is this. You've heard what the consultants have had to say, you've heard what we as committee members have had to say, and your fellow residents, your neighbors, your friends, family members in some instances. Do you feel comfortable on the trajectory we're headed at this point?
Yes.
Okay, I'm all seeing head nods. Now, if you think not, and I mean this sincerely, and you'd rather just not say it in a public forum, plenty fine. You know where I live. You've got my phone number. You've got my email. And Maren, I'm going to have you give the committee's email. So if you spit that out for us, do you remember it?
Yeah, masterplan@littletonma.org.
masterplan@littletonma.org.
I think it's right on the flyer. I got webmaster? No, okay, never mind. No webmaster.
Anyway, you can go on the town's webpage. Any way, shape, or form you want to communicate, even if you're comfortable and you've got another idea, get it to us, please. Talk to your friends. In other words, don't let this stay here. Look at this as a seed this evening, okay? We're trying to fertilize that seed. Let's germinate the seed. We'll run with the pun, if you don't mind, on the farms here. Germinate that seed. Have it grow. Make it that mustard bush that grows from that tiny little seed to that very large bush, if you would, please. So go out and prostylate. We're not going to make this an old-time revival evening, but maybe that's good for us. So, but sincerely. Now, with that, I'm going to offer our consultants another opportunity just for some closing comments. But I'm going to then ask that you stay a little bit because I do want to do some administrative work. And you're all plenty welcome to stay for the administrative work. We'll go over some schedule things. But if you want to blast, I understand. We've been doing this for an hour and a half now. And I do very much appreciate your forbearance and enduring through this. So thank you very much. So one last opportunity for the audience at this moment. Yes, Tony.
Yeah, Tony Blanco again. Just a question. What is your proposed schedule for future public meetings for
That's part of what we're going to talk about. We're moving on to the admin things, it's scheduled.
And this will be published too.
Right.
So all that will be available. And certainly feel free to stay tonight as we go through that.
One last comment. This is on historic preservation. Have you folks looked at ways towns can better protect buildings of historic value?
The person who's not here tonight, our preservation planner, is an expert in that, and she will want to weigh in on that.
Right, because we have a 6-month demolition delay, and it's only resulted in one save. Everything else is just ineffective.
Thanks, John. Judy?
Yes.
Closing comments for the whole audience?
I just want to thank you all for being here. I've been really impressed. I mean, usually when you go to a kickoff meeting for a master plan, you're sort of at the table with the master plan committee and nobody really sort of sees it, and why would they? Because most of it's sort of the dry stuff, like when are we going to meet next? So this was really a treat for us, and I love the way you set this up. I really do. I want to thank you for it, because we've gotten a chance now to hear a whole lot tonight that in any other master plan process, it probably would have taken us a month to get to this point. So thank you.
Good. No, thank you all.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay, now the mundane.
Yes.
Thanks, folks. Great night. You want to take a 3-minute break, party break?
A couple of minutes, yeah.
Yeah, that'd be good.
The most, sure, of course.
Yeah, I forgot my steer.
I experienced being cookie mom. I think I
I had some thoughts when I read other people's lists. I said, that sounds good. I had a couple of things to throw in, but I'm sure they'll be jumping around later.
Just like,
So how many people are on the board? And Renato?
I don't know where. We're for
I was gonna sign up, but I didn't, and then I'm glad I didn't, because
When the equity trading desk, I did analysis of trading.
Joe. Just ask folks in the back, continue the conversation, but just keep it down a little bit, please. Okay. Judy, oh, there she's in the back.
I was wondering how she's doing that.
Build out scenarios. Thank you very much. Right now, they're projecting this huge build out.
Okay, what do you want to attack next?
Schedule.
Okay, let's go.
Nothing matters more to me at the very beginning of these projects than trying to get a schedule down. Just because, as I'm sure you can understand, my night meeting schedule is what it is. It's what it means to work with local governments, and you guys need to be able to plan your lives as well. So I tried to put together, this is really just for discussion, but I think the most important thing is maybe to try to agree, first of all, on a meeting schedule for you guys, because we need to be present, and I want to make sure I get those dates in my calendar. But at the bigger picture level, it's also thinking about how we knit the other pieces of public participation into this schedule. So we make sure we don't collide with things like, oh, school just got out.
Which big town-wide event that
Yeah.
everybody wants to go to.
Exactly. Like Thursdays, what is that? Should we be here for it at some point? It's, I think just getting the schedule down. So I tried to kind of map out here.
Just give me one second. Do we have this electronically? That you could pop up on the board?
Oh, you do that. I do.
That way folks at home, Tony and Stacy, can see it. Is it underneath or on the side? It's going to say the on-off, right? See if I got Excuse me.
Let me just get this going here.
Good, that's fine.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, that
Welcome.
works well.
God, I love technology when it works, you know? The goal is to complete this process by town meeting in May of 2017, is my understanding. So I tried to just populate a calendar here based on what I think we need to be looking at, and you need to push back at me if you disagree. But we're obviously at the kickoff point here, and we, just at an umbrella level, the first couple of months of this process is really just intensive information gathering on our part. We're going to want to come here for a couple of days and just interview people back to back. Myron will probably drive you crazy, asking for some assistance to line up interviews. We need to talk to people. Gathering up data, some of which will come from you, some of it we'll get from independent sources, but we're trying to build an information base so we can understand where you are and how you got here. So that's a lot of what we're going to be doing for the next couple of months. The other thing that we need to do in that first sort of couple of months block of time is develop a public participation plan. Now,
which, by the way,
yes.
there's a very good starting point on that.
Okay.
That was developed for, what purpose was that developed?
Let's see, Sustainability Committee had a cheat sheet on how to get things advertised in Littleton, everything from the newspapers to a lot of the
That's
stores.
wonderful.
So it's a really good starting point.
That's super. That's wonderful, because sometimes just getting that information is really difficult. But the public participation plan is going to lay out things too, like we're going to be doing 3 town-wide meetings. I'm just sort of talking from the proposal at this point. So we need to think about plugging those into the process at kind of early on. And then maybe at the point where we're looking at kind of key issues and potential recommendations to address some of those issues, and then a look at the draft plan. So those might be the 3 sort of townwide meetings. And then we've also kind of built into our assumption that we will be doing some, you can call them focus groups, but sort of group meetings, maybe with some people who live in different parts of town or work in different parts of town. You can call them neighborhoods, you could just call them areas, but whatever. People who kind of know what's going on in a particular part of the community, and then also those topic meetings I referred to earlier, where you say, we're going to have a night tonight that we're just going to talk about open space and recreation. And so get your open space and recreation people here. We'll come and we'll have a bunch of questions to ask, and it's getting us educated and having a chance to also talk to people about what we see and maybe what opportunities we might identify, and what people's big issues are that they think should be in the plan. So there's those different pieces that get plugged into the plan, as well as, of course, your meetings. Every one of your meetings is a public participation opportunity because you are the public. You're the ones who are kind of the public who are driving this process. And your meetings are public, so people, as you can see, can come and they can speak. And, to your credit, you really gave them plenty of opportunity to talk, so that was wonderful. I was just saying to Daphne and Eric and Peter during the break that what we had listed for this facilitated discussion later, you did it all. Mm-hmm. We're this done. We learned more tonight, honest to God, than we usually do. So I've just tried to lay this out, and I guess what I'd like to do is ask you, first of all, does the overall architecture of what I've laid out here make any sense at all, or do you see a hole in, if I missed something really important here, or if I just misunderstood something?
Really, we have the planning board approval.
Mm-hmm.
We need that on here.
Okay.
And I would say April 17 is where that happens.
Yep.
Do you agree?
Yeah.
Because town meeting is the public unveiling, if you will, of the approved plan.
Fine.
Because
yes.
Well,
yes.
That surely it's the planning board that's going to approve it.
I do. So that's a good question. I'd like to ask you that, because every town has a different answer to this. What are you asking town meeting to do in May?
It's an opportunity to unveil it to the town, and certainly to begin the buy-in now. But, wrong word, is to continue the buy-in,
Yeah.
because we should have already begun the buy-in previous to even this evening. But now we're able to present a fully vetted plan to the town, and for them to see it, understand it, and now it becomes living and breathing at that point. Because the planning board approving it, as you know, is just another plan on the shelf until the people begin to use it.
Until they begin to implement it, right?
And provide them the opportunity also to, get some of those other questions out of the way.
Yep.
And maybe even to look at some of the elected officials, right in the eye, finger in the chest. Okay, we've done all this. We spent $200 and something thousand on it when it's all said and done. Now, we want you to execute it. So there's that also,
Often we meet with them earlier also, just to sort of bring them up to date, ask them what their concerns are, make sure we address them, so that it doesn't come, just at the end and then they haven't had anything to do with it.
Absolutely, yeah. So those milestones would be useful in here also, what Daphne's saying.
Okay.
So include those, please.
Okay. Yeah, I can put a lot more detail into this. I'm happy to do that.
But folks, what do you think as far as, first blush as we look at this?
I'm wondering if some of you have the placemaking charrettes in your neighborhood focus groups, you only have one X for each one of those, and I'm wondering if there's any sort of, so how do you see that playing out in terms of, A, how are you going to do that in terms of the town as a whole?
Yeah.
And then B, I see you have 3 for your townwide workshops.
Mm-hmm.
Good. These other groups, or do you see those other 2 kind of follow-ups being part of the overall townwide? You know what I mean?
We're thinking 3 just seems to work well. 3 sort of townwide workshops and 2 charrettes are what we could make work within the budget. The topic.
Well, no, see, I'm just wondering, so is a follow-up piece part of the townwide workshop, follow-up piece of those first 2?
The townwide workshop, which I'm thinking of in June.
Second.
It's okay. You mean the second townwide workshop?
No, what I'm talking about is you have placemaking charrettes and you have
Yes.
your neighborhood area focus groups.
Right.
So you have only one of each of those. So how does that, is there sort of a follow-up from the input of those
Well, there
individualized
won't be
committees?
like
Or are
two,
they part of the town-wide,
There-
there's a follow-up built into the town-wide?
the topic meetings and then the area meetings or neighborhood meetings are really a way for people who have an interest in a topic or live in a part of town to give us, to help inform priorities for the plan.
Right.
There isn't a then follow-up with the same group. What follows up is, we hear in April and May, issues that people bring to the table if they're concerned about open space or housing or whatever. And that stuff's going to come up in the first community-wide meeting. We've been out talking to people, we've done interviews, we've talked to people, and these are things that we've heard. And now we're asking all of you to come together as a community to help us kind of vet some of these issues, to make sure we're not missing something, because we didn't talk to the right people. But also to help think about to confirm that these are sort of priority areas, and now how do we maybe sort of rank them in terms of what matters. I also think, just based on what I've heard tonight, that we're going to need to build into this somehow an awareness for us of what happened with the last master plan, and how much of what's in that plan is still relevant today, and versus stuff that just needs to go. So whether that happens in the community-wide workshop or in those topic area groups, I'm not sure yet, but
So,
that needs to
I'd just
happen.
like to add to that, so it's also a follow-up in that all of this builds.
Yeah.
So we start very, very broad,
Mhm.
very broad brush, trying to understand the issues, trying to understand the concerns. And then as we start to understand, we go more, we start like this, and start to narrow down. And we're narrowing geographically and we're narrowing by topic.
Yeah.
And so the people who will be at all of those meetings will be in this sort of, big email list that will be invited to every meeting. So there is follow-up because everything builds.
Right, and so I think that that's key when you, obviously, when you start to kind of go out to the town and start to advertise, is, the reason why you want to do this now.
Exactly.
And it is worth you doing this now, because then you will have a chance
Well
later
said.
on at these other
At these
points.
other, and that
Do you know what I mean?
your
There has to be follow-up.
ideas are
Otherwise, I think you're going to
reflected.
lose, people are going to be like, I'm doing
Absolutely.
this.
Why did I do this?
And each meeting has a very specific purpose, and it's stated each time. And then we want people, it's not stated here yet, but it will be. And we want people at the end to understand that their ideas will then be reflected there. They have to be worked through, and there has to be consensus, and there has to be some understanding of feasibility. So it goes through various iterations, but it all builds, and it's all a follow-up of the previous. It's all related.
One of the ways to do some of that homework on the previous master plan is the 100 or so people who participated, their names are right in the master plan. So I don't know if you may see some one-on-ones as being beneficial, or even we get a small focus group of some of those people, 4 or 5, whatever you think is appropriate, and trying to get them in the room same time with you as one of those
Byron, we
techniques.
should probably think about that as one of the interview groups.
Pete? Yes, sir. The other thing is, we, at 2 of our previous meetings, we did go through the master plan, so we had a discussion. You might want to look at the, it's all available at the Littleton Community Cable Division. I think one of them was in November.
Yeah.
It's all on the agenda, but...
Okay.
Yeah, I'll get you those dates of the master plan meetings when they actually critiqued the existing master plan. And
Oh, that's helpful. Yeah, that would be
Maybe
helpful.
that's all we need.
Yeah, that may be.
I talked a lot then, so I really want you to hear it.
He was the lead, he facilitated that particular session.
I see. All right.
Okay. All right, so the question would be, because on the surface, as far as spacing and interval in between, things like that, timing across the calendar, I want to defer a little bit to you that the way you've X'd out each month in the particular, subject area makes sense. So I don't have too much thing. I would only ask, when we look at dates, that we ensure that we look at major holidays, holy days. The holidays are easy, but certainly some of the holy days, keep that in mind too, because it's important to folks in town.
The other thing, though, that we don't know, that you know, are what is happening in town. There may be some large events, school department events, townwide events, or other things that people are very interested in town that would conflict, and we would be very unfortunate to put up such an effort and then have that be diffused.
Let's have Kelly help us out a little bit there, please. Yep. Kelly Clench is our school superintendent. I don't know, was Kelly on the tour today? By any chance? Okay. Certainly somebody you need to meet in town, our school superintendent.
Sure.
for many reasons.
Yeah.
Besides, he's a great guy. In fact, he moved here from Canada by way of Maine.
Really?
Yes, yep. So, but anyway, Mike's on the school committee, he's chairman of the school
Okay.
committee.
Yeah.
He'll get with Kelly, we'll help out with the school events.
Yeah, we'll certainly try to do a, a run-through of the holidays to be conscious of and events here, so we don't end up setting up, picking a date for a big community-wide meeting and then find out there's a conflict. What sometimes happens, however, is we pick the date, and the time that the date's picked, it's all fine, and then something else comes up. But once you start a big community meeting in motion, it's kind of hard to pull it back. There's a little more flexibility with your meeting dates than there is with some others. But
I remember once we had this big meeting and there was some big football game. And people left halfway. They just all left.
Yeah. So,
You heard, you heard third Thursday mentioned.
Yeah.
June, July, and August. Very clearly, the third Thursday of each month in the town common from 5 to 8. And you'll get a lot of townsfolk in the town. Now, obviously,
What happens? Yeah.
businesses, organizations, groups, whatever, profit, nonprofit, get to set up, a little 10 by 10 roughly in town.
It's on the common, right? Do they know that?
Town day,
So
once
like
a
a little
month.
festival?
Excuse me?
Town day, it's like a town day, but it's once.
We really just call it third Thursday.
Yeah.
In fact, Joe Knox, who was here earlier, one of our selectmen, he's the one who instituted it some years back. What are we into, about the 6th year now? I think. Ballpark, 6 years now. And you heard one of the ladies just say, how lovely it is. And it really is neat. We get little dance groups, some of the kids, whatever. So put on a little show, maybe a little oratory, some musicians, yeah. Hot dog.
Ray,
Hot
is
dogs,
it-
oh yeah, can't
Ray,
forget the hot dogs,
Has it
too.
been organized through Park and Rec?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
So Lisa, who introduced herself earlier from Park and Rec.
Alicia.
Alicia, excuse me, thank you. Yeah. I do the same thing with a gal at work, because I get two of, but my bad, I apologize. So there's an opportunity for sure this upcoming summer.
Yeah.
To get out and meet and greet. And if you like, we can also arrange it so you actually have a booth.
Yes, I think that's a
Well,
great idea.
Sometimes we do that, and what we do is then we have material that someone from the committee is there and gives out, and maybe also some way of collecting input or response to
Quick
things.
survey, yeah.
Yeah, so we can work through the logistics of it, but that's just one more
And so in order to
opportunity.
get the booth, usually you have to work through the rec department. Right.
So I'd recommend adding that to this
Yeah.
matrix, third Thursday in each of those 3 months.
Can I add that the best way to meet people too is the town transfer station?
Yeah. Oh, that's like my town. Yes.
Every time I go there,
Yes.
I'm talking to somebody, and I usually spend a half an hour.
Right.
So we'll
Oh, you're that guy?
We'll give the flyers too for the transfer station.
Do you have a swap area?
Yes, we do.
Oh, yeah. We call ours the Duxbury Mall. And that's where people go. Candidates go there with their papers to get signatures, and yeah, it's great.
It's an awesome place to
Yeah.
meet people. Yeah.
Every time I've done that when running for office, I said, is this apropos that I'm at the dump?
You don't want to say dumper.
Yeah, it is. We all call it the dump, right? But not supposed to, so. Yeah, ultimately what we're going to do is produce a public participation plan, and so that level of detail will be in the plan, and this is really, really helpful to us.
Especially what you saw tonight. This is
Yeah.
just a small handful of
Yeah.
input, so I think
Yeah.
that is really key.
So the
And to
next
your
time we'll
point-
talk through what are the places where people meet and
Yeah.
what are the ways people communicate, and we'll develop a much more detailed plan.
And to your point about the sort of continuity or things, follow up, we should probably try to have some kind of graphic in the public participation
Just so people
plan that shows
understand
how it
what's like
goes.
with
That's
the-
a really
I
good,
think it's a
yeah.
really good point.
Yeah.
And maybe also we can put the purpose already out and
Yeah.
the dates out, so kind of you see the whole thing.
Yeah, if we can get the dates out, it
If we
would be
can.
great.
Well, yeah, I know, and I know it's hard to do, and that
Oh, this is
obviously
just-
related to this here, and just kind of thinking that through in
Yes.
terms of your whole.
Something I'd like you to consider, when we first were beginning our formation, Foreman, Storming Norman, all that sort of stuff, we try to come up with a catchphrase. We didn't come up with anything really that, this is it, this catches us. So we'd like you to think about that, and
We're
then...
going to do that next time.
Oh, sorry.
Grand
Brand
plan,
process.
yes. She's a
logo and a
master at
tagline.
branding plans.
So that, and, you know, a graphic too that
Yes,
brands it,
yes,
so,
yes.
well, we use it for everything. Oh, thank you.
You've got the right person here. You don't need me,
That's what
Fed
we do next
Dabney.
time.
Yeah,
Okay.
yep. So I would think just.
One
yeah.
question about the schedule.
Yeah.
In terms of like the charrettes, do we have to wait till after Labor Day? Is it possible to do it earlier in the summer or?
Well, I'm just concerned that I don't know how we can get to the point that we need to be at to do those between now and when school gets out.
And also.
That was why I had asked you, I mean, I'm
Right.
not averse to doing it sooner, but I don't think we can get there.
Well, I'm just asking, is the summer off limits for public meetings,
Oh.
workshops?
Which month?
Summer.
Summer generally between, you know.
No, I wouldn't say off
vacations, 4th of
limits.
July.
You guys are more experienced in this and you know better than we as far as, because certainly when we look at public meetings and the like, summer goes down, you know,
Yeah.
church attendance goes
Yeah, we
down.
never do
So a lot of those things. But, you know, we're going to defer to you a little bit. You know, we'll give you our inside knowledge, obviously, of the town. But when it comes to some of those sorts of things, if you think August is the right month to do it, you know, we're not Italy, so we're all at work, some way, shape, or form. But, you know, Pat spending, you know, quite a few years living in Italy, August, you didn't get anything done.
No.
So, you know, we've got to certainly.
But so aren't some of you Italian though?
Part of me is, yes.
Well, that's-
So don't you go? No, in August?
Oh, no. I lived there for 3 years almost, so.
In mind only.
I see.
Over there in exactly. It's in August.
That's almost.
Some argue August has nothing to do with it.
And I lived in Greece also for a year.
Oh, you did? Where?
Angelos. Very small town near Volos.
Yeah, near Vodos. My parents were from Vodos.
Okay. You know the area.
Very well.
I'm open to it, Peter. I just was trying to avoid summer because usually towns say, oh, you can't do, well, when school's over, you can't do anything over the summer except perhaps business work or continuing to go forth on stuff that doesn't require a lot of public input. But if you don't think that's necessarily an issue here, then that's fine. Every town is different.
I don't think, you know, at least if I'm speaking collectively, if I'm not, stop me. We're not adverse to it, but we do want to defer to your professional judgment on that a little bit.
Yeah.
Because this sort of activity, I mean, we know what we can gather for folks for a certain type of event. Like that third Thursday, it'll be
Yeah.
swamped in the common. But now, if you want to do a charrette, you know, on a particular evening, you know, in one of the schools, just as an example, how many people might we get? I don't know.
One suggestion I would make is if you, mid-August, people are back because youth and high school sports have started.
That's a good point.
So if you're willing to hold off till then, I would say you would have really very little problem. From July 4th till mid-August, you are going to bump up against vacations and other things like that.
When are we starting school? In September?
This year, we will start after Labor Day. We have to.
I do want to make sure we do the first townwide meeting before school gets out.
Oh, yeah.
Because that first meeting is really critical. But we can look at the charrettes late August if you want. I'm not averse to that.
Or do one in late August and one in September.
Sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Do that.
And I asked that we be flexible. If we fail, you know, we've got an opportunity to reset at a later date.
Yeah. It's easier to move a meeting like this than it is a major public event.
Yeah.
Because the major public event, there's a lot of just production that goes on for it. Like, one of the things that I
think
do.
he's saying repeat it if we don't get enough people. Is that what
Okay.
Yes, that's what I mean by that.
That's
Thank
what
you.
he means. He's
Yeah,
not
I mean,
saying
for
move
that
it.
point, most of the production is done. I mean, I'm not sure I'd want to ask you to be on the hook to do a repeat of charrette, but I mean, a
Well, I mean, it's-
community-wide meeting,
A lot of the charrette is our work.
yeah.
It's kind of like a group of designers who come in and do the plan in real time with as much participation as possible.
Okay.
Whether or not people show up, we still do the work.
Copy. I understand.
Can the charrettes be made like, let's say the group meets in this, let's say the high school auditorium, then they break out into the classrooms, into the little subgroups, and they come back together at the auditorium to regroup and set things up back together to form whatever solution. It's like breakout sessions, and then
That's what we do in the townwide meetings.
Yeah. And also the charrettes. I mean,
Yeah.
well, during the first townwide meeting, we'll try to define what the desired scope of the charrette will be.
Right.
You know, how big an area? Is it kind of conceptual or is it very specific design? That kind of thing. And then we design the charrette itself to meet that need. So it could be breakout sessions, could be, you know, a 10 groups of people at separate tables, all working on the design. At the end, each of the groups presents their results.
You
Something
can take a
like
look
that.
at the high school, see how it's set up, and
Yeah.
maybe that'll serve you.
Okay, we've perhaps, in my fault, gone down a couple of rabbit holes on some techniques,
Sorry.
tactics, and procedures, so to speak, when we're really staying on schedule.
Yeah.
So what I'd like to ask, does anybody have an objection as the schedule as we see it here?
The overall, you mean, yeah.
No. Okay. So,
Can we look at can we talk
Yeah.
about your committee meeting dates? Because
Yeah,
I probably have more anxiety about that than you want to know, because I've got to get dates in my calendar. I've just got to do it so that I can protect them.
who came up with the dates? Malcolm?
I asked Mara, is there a night that seems to work for this group? And she thought maybe Tuesday did, so I just went into my calendar and I started grabbing Tuesday nights. Is what I did.
Is once a month from us enough?
Well, over the course of the plan, we're doing like about a dozen committee meetings. So I'd rather space them in a way that kind of makes sense than to do some too close together and then there's a gap.
Yeah.
So I've tried to hit most months here. I left out December because my experience is people just don't want to deal with the master plan in December. They don't want to do it. And I left out August only because, you know, this is an example of where you got to tell us whether we're nuts. But often what happens with the towns I've worked in is in August there's just this disappearing act that happens. And sometimes it's July, but there's it just seems to be in each community there's a time when people just disappear. So I thought, well, it's going to be August, right?
It
So I'll
might
just
not be
leave August
physical
out.
disappearance, it's just they tune out.
Right. So there are 2 months in here where I didn't have a date, Paul, but
Here's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Each of us, the 12 committee members, every night is a bad night.
Yeah.
Which makes every night a good night. Okay, the way I view it, okay? Because there's always going to be conflicts.
Yeah.
What I would recommend
Yep.
is you put down what you think our committee should meet
Mhm.
based on the overall schedule that best services that overall schedule. Is that okay, folks?
I really did. I mean, I
That's what
actually
this
did
is.
think
Okay.
through.
Oh, sure.
These dates that are here on the back side of this, the committee meeting dates, I actually said, I had my calendar open, I'm thinking, well, if we're going to try to do the community-wide meeting in June, then I know we need to have a meeting with you guys in April and May in order just to prepare for that.
Excellent.
Yeah, I really did think through these dates. So, but I think someone had a concern about the first date I have on here, which is April 19th, because that's school vacation week. Is that going to be a problem for any of you?
What do you guys think?
I mean, I think it's the same point you made. It'll be a problem for some of us, but not necessarily because of school vacation week. And the other people won't be a problem with it at all, it's just another day of work, so.
So it's not like they're half of you away that week.
I think if you try to schedule it around everybody's calendar.
It'll be fine,
Town
that's
does
fine.
have a April 19th function, but I don't even know if that's on the 19th itself, or is it the 18th?
The historical
Yeah,
thing?
yeah.
It is the anniversary of the Revolutionary War, and there's a
Right.
historical speaker.
Yes. they
That's
do the
right.
speakers, yeah.
I don't know.
Yes, shut around the road.
But I'm just saying, is that on the 19th
Harley Ahmed is
itself?
now
or-
alive, remembers that.
I think they've held to that, so.
We do, we hold to the traditional date.
You do?
Up at, Liberty.
Liberty Square.
Okay.
And that's usually right around 7 o'clock or so, but it doesn't last long.
It's a 30-minute thing, so if you didn't mind starting that at 7:30, it's workable.
I can do that.
What do you think, folks?
Yeah, I mean, we're not all going to
I
be
think
at
we'd
every
be
meeting.
conscious of
I'll
that
be
on the
here,
time
but-
of it, that's all.
I mean,
So let's make that one 7:30.
you and I definitely need to be here
Two of us will be
because
here.
Daphne's the one who's going to be pulling together the detailed public participation plan.
And that's
so
what we have to
both-
do next time.
Yeah, we do, so.
And I invite you to come on out. Now, it's a small gathering,
Yeah.
but you'll meet some folks dressed in traditional colonial garb, families who were here during the Revolution.
Good photo ops.
So that may be an opportunity for you to meet some folks, too.
Okay, so that's at 7 or 6:30 or something?
7
and then-
PM is when we do it, isn't it?
What's that?
7 PM when we do it.
I'm not certain.
Oh, right.
That's my recollection, but we'll clarify that.
Okay, but do you think you can meet at 7:30?
Yeah.
All right, so why don't we stay with the date then and just say for that particular night, the meeting would start at 7:30 instead of 7?
It's roughly 10-15-minute ceremony out there.
Where is it?
Liberty Square, we'll give you all the directions and stuff.
all right, thank you.
It's out off of Foster Street.
Okay.
Really off Taylor, but you go out Foster by the train station,
Okay.
up that direction.
All of these are Tuesday nights. And
Yeah,
I'm just,
so-
I mean, I know it's kind of hard for people to foresee conflicts, but if you think basically these dates kind of look okay,
We need to put them in our
We need to
schedule.
get them in our calendar, so I can say to anybody else who asks me, can you come to a meeting on April 19th? I can say, no, I'm in Littleton, and I understand, it's committed to Littleton. I need to be able to do that, honest to God, Paul,
I understand.
for a year.
That's fair. I can believe it, because I saw, when you quickly went through your, trying to find this, I saw many other towns there. And imagine you don't just put them up there for decoration. So, no, fair enough. Absent any dissent, we will commit to these dates.
Okay,
And they provide us a point of departure,
okay.
understanding that things do come up. Although, June 21st, maybe we do that out on the lawn, longest day of the year, so.
Great idea. You have any picnic tables?
And we do have some drinking establishments in town, if you don't mind.
We don't mind.
It'd be not quite an official meeting, because we don't hold official meetings at public pubs, but.
And see, and again, just to sort of underscore the relationship between the specific dates for the committee meetings and the timeframes for the other ones, I have you on there for June 21st because I'm assuming that the first townwide workshop is going to be in that week. So I thought, we probably want to have a meeting that Tuesday night, and maybe the townwide workshop is Thursday or something, but it always helps to have everybody together one last time before you do one of these, so and I'm not trying to force these dates on you, I'm just trying to ask if they're a problem, then let's...
As you explained, there's a logic to it,
Yeah.
which was a logic I was seeking, and you'd already done it, so way ahead of us. No, thank you.
All right. So when we get together next month, we'll try to talk about maybe these timeframes for the public participation events and how they're all going to connect and so forth. We don't have to plug those dates in tonight. I've just got timeframes in here right now for when those things might happen, but I'm kind of thinking next month we can maybe try to put more detail on that.
And then come up with that graphic and kind of that explanation about how it all goes together.
And something, if you want to put on the calendar, April 20th, what we do here in town, our town elections are in May, first Saturday in May, after the first Monday in May, because we do a town meeting. But the Rotary Club here in town sponsors a candidates night for the local elections. So that's going to happen on April 20th. We usually fill the room here with folks. I don't know if you'd want to be, a fly on the wall, if you want to be more engaged before and or after, but then you'll hear the questions that are presented to the candidates. And that perhaps might give you a feel as to what people in town are thinking also. And toss it out for your
Also watch
consideration.
it on the video too, it's going to be all.
However you wish.
That's actually helpful. I mean, ironically, I have another meeting that night in this area. So I think I actually could come to part of it and then go on to the other meeting, or go to the other meeting for a while, then come here. I want to be like literally 2 towns
Just toss it out
away.
for your consideration.
Yeah. It's helpful to us to know when these things are going on. I mean, we can't be at everything, but certainly some things it's really helpful to us. Something like that I think would be particularly helpful, because when you're thinking about how does government work here, is it functional, is it dysfunctional? I mean, what are the issues? Candidates night brings that out, because people are running for some reason, right? Do you have many races this year, or do you not know yet?
We'll know in about 3 weeks for sure.
Is that when the paper deadline
But,
is? The paper's
yes,
deadline?
yeah. But right now, it's shaping up not many competitive races. So we'll just wait and see.
Okay.
The other reason why those things are important is that as we move along and we develop flyers and materials to distribute, when there are a lot of people gathered in one place, it's a great opportunity to get the word out in physical flyer format. So that's another reason why.
And generally, those are people that be involved too, the
That's
folks that
right.
show up for that.
Sounds fun.
Judy, I did have one question for you.
Yep.
You had talked, we had talked that early on, one of your thing will be dedicated interview days.
Yes.
Do we have that blocked out yet?
I haven't blocked it
nervous
out
about
yet.
that already.
No, I know. I didn't actually put it in here yet because I knew we could figure that out. But do you want to talk about that now, or do you want to talk about it offline? We need to be able to come here for a couple of days, probably 2 of us. It'll probably be Daphne and Eric, or Daphne and someone else from our office, and interview people. And typically the way we do that is we say to you, we can be in Littleton from 10 to 6 on this day and noon to 8 on this day. So we can pick up some evening hours. Populate that time as best you can with as many people as you can. And we'll have 2 people here to do interviews. Figure an hour. And you can either have one person come in, or you could have a group of maybe up to 4 or 5. But it's an opportunity for us to just talk to a whole bunch of people in a fairly condensed period of time, and we learn a lot from that. So I'm kind of figuring that's going to happen within the next month, but I hadn't blocked it specifically on these.
Tell us the days you would like to do it, and we'll populate your
Okay.
schedule.
And I have to talk to them. I actually haven't done that, so that's my fault. But
Is there a usual methodology for choosing who populates that?
you know, I've never had a problem. Seriously.
I think he's asking what's the criteria.
Yeah, I know, I'm getting to. With people biasing the selection too much of the folks who get interviewed. I typically say, look, people who've been active in the town, people who've been active in particular issues, the whole purpose of this is to educate us and for us to maybe start to be able to ask questions. So when you pick them, just know, don't avoid groupthink. I think that's the most important criterion.
But all right, there's already one decision made in there. It's picking rather than opening it to the general
It's absolutely
public.
not opening it. You've got to be able to know that you're not going to have a whole bunch of people show up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So you are selecting them, it's true. And there's always going to be some built-in bias for that, but we have to be able to know that we're going to have a group of no more than 5 people, for example. So it's...
Right, but if you have 5 people and you're doing from 12 to 6, that on one day plus...
Yeah, it's a lot of, I mean, it can be a lot of
It's a
people.
lot.
I mean,
It's a lot.
we did this in Arlington for their master plan. I think we ended up with something like 73 interviews we did. I mean, just because they just packed them in as well as they could. Arguably, they were all selected. But over the course of those 3 days, they really hit every group. I would say nobody in the end said we didn't have a chance to be heard.
But that was a different scope. That was a broader scope, right? They had requested all those interviews. The town had.
Yeah, they actually asked us to take an additional day too, but I'm just saying they did a really good job of
Right,
saying,
I do that.
here's a schedule, and we also said, don't feel that you have to have this block from 1 to 2 o'clock, just people who are interested in open space. You don't have to do that. It's nice, it's easy for an interviewer if all the people in the room are interested in a topic, but you never can make that happen. And I think there's a value in just saying, here's this block of time, you can come here, and you may end up with a group with people you hate, or you may end up in a group of people you really like, or you may end up in a group of people you don't even know, but you're going to learn from each other, and we're all going to be asking you the same questions. So you might want to all be thinking about who you think we need to talk to. And I don't want to be overly prescriptive about it. You guys know this town a heck of a lot better than we do. You know it better than we're going to know it even at the end of this process. So think in terms of knowledge, depth, activism, influence, interest, people who you don't want to have annoyed because they were left off a list. Every community has a few of those too. And, you know, they're sort of an annoyance in a way, but they know a lot, so you really do want to talk to them. You guys think about it. And we'll give you the dates, and we'll say, here's the block of time we can be there. Go ahead and set them up, and we'll be here.
So something else that we wanted to ask you about tonight, and Eric and I are most interested in, is the web presence.
Oh, yeah.
So what we'd like to do is to have it be as straightforward and as simple as possible so that someone who is interested could come to one place where we could post things, meeting notes, announcements, progress, reports that are completed, but also have a place where they could click and they could join the existing Facebook page so that it's all in one place and easy to navigate and you know, just flow. So Eric, do you want to talk about the options?
Yeah, 2 options that we had talked about. One, and totally up to your preference or however you think people engage with the web in Littleton best, could be a dedicated page on the town's website, or in some cases we've actually created a website separate. It could be littletonmasterplan.com. Like something that's very relatable and simple. So
and
we
you can click to from the town.
And on there we can have Facebook page links, or if there's a town Twitter handle or something like that, we can have all those things linked in there. Or we could just do it through web links on the town's website.
What's your recommendation?
Honestly, it really doesn't matter exactly.
Well, I'd like to say that I like the way you make it look, and it does attract more attention, and as part of the branding, maybe you kind of be more
You mean in terms of the separate web page?
Yeah.
The website?
The
Separate
website,
website?
Have you seen the section that's already on the town's?
No, we haven't.
Okay.
So maybe we should do that.
The only issue I see is that when we're done, eventually
Yeah, that's
the
what I was just
license is
gonna
going
say.
to expire,
So that's what
so
you need to know, right?
the advantage to having the separate website that we maintain and it's linked to your website is
It's
going to be really
forever.
beautiful,
And it
right?
just
It's going to be
keeps-
awesome.
yeah.
I mean, we can do a nice page on the town website too. We're actually doing that in another town, but you get a lot more flexibility if we're designing a website and you're just linked to it. But then the downside is it's going to go away in a couple of years if you don't pay to keep it going. That's the advantage to having a page on your
I think
website.
when the master plan update process is finished, as long as we can port over what we want
That's
of
true.
the
And you would.
resulting
That's true.
product, we would load that onto
That's
the,
true, sure.
to the planning board's page and go from
Yeah,
there. I think that would
absolutely.
be perfectly reasonable.
Okay.
Do you have virtual town hall? Is that what you use?
Yeah, do you know what your web's,
QSend.
okay.
Yeah. And I would think that's more of a content provider type, so I think you guys are gonna be better off having your own page. It'll give you the ability to achieve the goals you set versus being restricted by
Okay.
the software paradigm we have chosen to use, because we are probably not as good as that as other people might be.
Okay. That's fun.
Great.
So we can get going on that too.
All right, and then we'll look to get the ability to link from
Yes.
each page we have.
Right.
Yes. I think that the overarching issue, which you pointed out so well, is not having so many different, web presences that people can't figure out where they're supposed to go.
Where
And
to
so
go.
consolidating makes just a lot of sense. If they can
And that's
easily.
the other thing about the way Eric does it, is that you can more easily show, okay, this is where, this
Yeah.
is the next thing happening, this is where you want to go to have a conversation. It's easier to do than on, I mean, I've used the virtual town hall, and it's kind of clumsy, right?
It is
Not as
clumsy, yeah.
attractive, and
It's all things to all people and nothing to anyone.
It's not meant for interaction,
that's it.
virtual town
Well,
hall.
I think Mike said it very well.
An area where you can get to meet a lot of people too is we have a fairly robust council of churches here in town.
Oh, yeah, we want to talk to them.
Okay, and certainly we can hook you up there with the right POCs.
Yep.
So that you can do your business as you think necessary, but that's just another opportunity.
Some of the best interviews I've had, seriously, for a master plan, are meetings with the clergy, and they all come together, and they're great. They just see layers of a community that you don't hear any other way.
Another source that you could reach out to people, especially if you're trying to advertise a website or try to make meetings. I collect the donations that the Littleton Post Office and other post offices do for collecting for loaves and fishes. the
Yes.
Pantry.
Yes.
And then the carriers bring them all the bags that they collect in the mailboxes. But they put out a leaflet at every mailbox. And you could probably advertise the website on that, and you could probably
So
advertise
the leaflet is what?
the meetings.
What does the leaflet normally say?
The post office is doing a collection of anything that can be donated
Oh,
to
so
pantries.
it's for the collection.
Yeah,
You
and then
think
the
they
post
wouldn't
office
mind
collects
if
the
we
stuff. They
do
leave
that?
the bag out by the post office.
So you don't think they would mind if we put the website on?
You can ask,
I'd like to segue in John's thing about the loaves and fishes. I'm certain you're familiar with that.
Yes.
But the point is, recent financial analysis puts Littleton about the top 12% in the state of Massachusetts median household income. Okay. That said, there are folks who need help.
Oh, yeah.
So as we go through this process, I certainly hope that we focus also in that area as to, we build this grandiose town, but are we excluding people? So please keep that on the radar scope, folks such as that.
Yeah, I think anybody working on a master plan today has got to look at that, because the federal regulations around fair housing have changed a lot, and so it's really a conversation. Any housing aspect of a plan is not just about where housing should go, what kind of housing, and affordability, but it's also, it's fair housing. It's who gets to live in your community and who's not here, and so, and what's it like for marginalized populations to live in a community. So we really have to look at that.
And MAPC did do a good job for us with the housing production plan. Showing a lot of that information will be
Yeah,
there.
I have that, yeah.
Oh, good.
We've kind of rated your website for everything that was there that we could possibly find.
Steal it all.
Yeah.
Plagiarism, it's
Yeah.
okay.
You could probably include the first responders in our town to see what their perspective on
Yes.
aspects of the town.
Yes. Very interesting to hear you say that. One of the master plans I worked on in a very affluent community where everybody thought everybody was fine was to talk to the police chief and find out just what it was like for them to essentially have to function as a social work department, because that's what they had become.
And now as a substance abuse treatment center.
Yes, right.
Narcan.
Right.
Okay, are we sanguine with the schedule, folks?
Yes.
All right, good.
Aye.
Schedule's good. And of course, you can't bust a suspense if you don't have one, right? What else would you like to discuss this evening?
You know, I had sources of information on here. I actually think for now we're okay. I emailed Maren today, and I know there's probably going to be more stuff, but here are things that come to mind. And by the time we got here this afternoon, a couple of department heads had already responded with a bunch of information that we were looking for.
So Pam Campbell's from...
Yeah, I mean, it was just like, this is awesome. So we've kind of got that process going. There's a lot on your website. I mean, I'm not going to ask for something that we can't find. I think we have a responsibility to try to see what we can get on our own. Right now, I'm not feeling any anxiety about getting information. I think we're probably going to be okay. If something occurs to us after this meeting, I think we'll just, email you, and anything that can be sent to us electronically, believe me, we would much rather have that than paper. I'm going to put everything for the team on a base camp site so everybody has access to it, and I think we're fine.
Okay. I personally think you are very nice people, okay? But I also have a feeling that I think you can be frank and candid with us, and we encourage that, please. If we're doing something, you say, like, what are they thinking? Please, ask the question, what are we thinking?
Yeah.
All right?
We will.
Don't let it linger. Don't let anything fester. If we're rubbing something wrong, yes, and that's beyond just what are they thinking, like, do they not get it? But since we're all adults here, let's bring it to the forefront, and we'll deal with it. So that way, nothing festers and we develop ill feelings. I anticipate we should disagree on some things. I anticipate we should have some robust discussions on some issues, okay? And then at the end of the day, we say, what's the best path we can possibly take based on this? I hope that happens, because then we're really getting down and not just scratching the surface, but we're starting to dig into Mother Earth. So that's our obligation to you, but also I ask it's your obligation to us. So I would like to exchange those expectations, and that we're all in agreement there. Okay.
Much appreciated.
Okay. And that, I've been called many bad things in the life, so one or two more won't matter. Maybe I'll finally wise up. So, with that, what I'd like to go, if it's okay with you, go around the committee and see if we've got any closing comments at this point. And I'm going to ask Stacy and Tony also, because you guys hung out.
Stay.
Thanks very much.
We're impressed.
So I'm going to ask you, too, as we go around. Paul?
Just looking at the facilitated discussion questions, it just prompted me to make a couple of notes earlier in the meeting while I was listening intently to what you were saying, Mr. Chairman. And so since I made the notes at that time, I might as well just speak to them too. This is somewhat reiterative. When I look at the question there, what potential problems and opportunities should the consultants be thinking about? If you do go back and watch or listen to that meeting in November, I spoke from a place where I'm particularly concerned that the established structures, like the language of 30-odd years ago when the legislature, when the legislation was created, that crafted or determined at that point in time what the 9 subject areas shall be, and therefore everything falls into one of those silos, or the alternative universe where, the town decides what is and isn't an issue, depending upon whether or not they have a department that runs that function. There's a lot of the world that falls between those cracks. I mean, whether it's something... and I'll just kind of cap it off at this. It could be topics that don't neatly fit into it. It's like, at what age or what point do people decide to move into Littleton, and when do they decide to move out? Is it a factor of anything that's here, or do they consciously say, we want to be here for a period of time, raise our kids and go elsewhere, or no, we're being forced out for this? You know, those similar questions can be applied to commute issues too. And, you know, and then the whole shopping functions, those are the lifestyle on weekends. Do you stay in Littleton? Do you not? Do you leave because you want to go to Boston to go to restaurants? Or do you not go, do you stay here, or you not stay here because we don't have those options? I don't know where those kind of questions get easily answered in these silos, so I'm hoping that our mindset will be broad enough.
Maybe a survey with just those questions.
Well, yeah, but then the thinking process that goes into creating the survey becomes the important thing too. So anyway, that's my thought, to make sure that we don't get hidebound by what has been, you know, somebody probably wisely under the gun, you know, had to write a list 30 years ago, and now that's the world we live in, you know.
What date was that meeting?
November or something, I just, yeah.
Then that's not magical, it's just a, you know, topic point.
I'd like to, it would be worth it for us definitely to see it. We'll find it.
Melissa?
I'm good, thank you very much.
Thank you.
John?
I'm good.
Yep, all set, thank you.
You're all making me look bad.
Good.
Yeah, good feedback. You're making us look bad.
No, we make you look like the thinker.
Right.
Oh.
What Paul said.
Oh, I promised Stacy and Tony.
All set.
Maren?
I'm good, thank you.
Oh, excuse me, sorry, Stacy.
I just had another idea of where you could actually talk to townspeople that's outside of the meeting, and that's the Appleman Triathlon. The Appleman Triathlon is in July. And I'm a triathlete, and it's my absolute favorite triathlon that you do because the community comes out, and they're along the bike course, they're along the running course, supporting the athletes, but it gives you access to people.
This is July?
It's in July. It's usually around like the 18th. I don't know. It's a Sunday.
Third Sunday of July, sponsored by the Rotary Club of Littleton.
And it's just a great time to see people out.
Thank you.
She's won the past 2 years, but she's too modest to take.
Congratulations.
I do the swim portion.
You do?
I run, well, when I say I run the swim portion.
Yeah, I ring the bell on the hill. I love people ringing the bell on the hill.
John and I are both Rotarians, so we help put that on.
Maybe they can speak at the Rotary.
Melissa? Yeah, I think I'm going to ask you to do that. Excuse me.
I think that's all. You guys have anything else you want to come?
All right. I feel it was a very productive evening.
Yeah,
I
me
hope
too.
likewise for you all. And we will see you all again formally in a meeting April 19th.
Yes.
But previous to that, you'll have already been snaking around in Littleton.
Yeah. Maren, I'll email you in the next day or two with dates that we know we can be here for interviews. All right. I want to pull people.
All right, take a motion. Oh, excuse me, go ahead. Take a motion on the minutes from January 7th, excuse me.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moving seconds, accept the meeting, the Master Plan Update Steering Committee of January 7th, 2016. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, take a motion to close.
To adjourn?
Second.
Okay, second to adjourn, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you very much.